At 10:03 ante-meridian on June 19, 1944, Lieutenant Alexander Carter sat in a vibrating cockpit watching the deck officer on the USS Lexington frantically wave a launch signal while pointing at a sky that was about to fall. The air over the Pacific Ocean did not smell like salt anymore. It smelled like high-octane aviation fuel and unadulterated panic. Inside the helmet of every pilot on the flight deck, the radio was screaming with reports that did not make sense. The radar operators below decks were not seeing a squad of enemy planes. They were not seeing a wing. They were seeing a solid wall of static moving across the screen at 300 miles per hour. Admiral Ozawa, the commander of the Japanese fleet, had just bet the entire Imperial Navy on a single roll of the dice. He had emptied his aircraft carriers. Every flyable machine with a propeller and a rising sun painted on the wing was currently clawing for altitude, heading straight for the American fleet. Intelligence estimated 450 enemy aircraft inbound. It was the largest aerial armada ever assembled for a single strike in the history of naval warfare. Standing in their way was Alex Carter, sitting in a Hellcat that sounded like a tractor, chewing on a bag of bolts. The engine was not just rough, it was angry. The massive Pratt & Whitney radial engine up front was spitting oil onto his windshield, smearing his vision with a greasy rainbow-colored haze before he even released the brakes. The supercharger, the mechanical lung that allowed the plane to breathe at high altitudes, was rattling in its housing like a prisoner trying to break free. By every regulation in the United States Navy handbook, this plane was grounded. It was a maintenance hazard. It was a flying coffin waiting to claim another name for the casualty lists. But Carter did not care about the handbook. He had spent the last 24 hours fighting a different kind of war, a war against his own support crew just to get this specific plane with these specific guns onto the catapult. The conflict had started the night before deep in the humid steel belly of the Lexington, while the other pilots were playing cards, smoking lucky cigarettes, or writing letters home they hoped would not be read at funerals. Alex was down in the armory, bothering the ordnance men again. To the rest of the squadron, Carter was a weirdo. They called him the watchmaker behind his back. Not because he repaired timepieces, but because he was obsessed with precise timing and exact measurement. Officers flew the planes. Enlisted men fixed them. That was the rule, the natural order of military hierarchy written in regulations thicker than any Bible. Alex broke that rule every single day. He was standing over a pile of ammunition belts, his hands covered in gun oil, arguing with Chief Petty Officer Robert Martinez, who had been loading aircraft guns since Carter was still in short pants back in Michigan. The argument was about the bullets. The standard loadout for a Navy fighter was a specific recipe tested and approved by experts who had never faced a zero in combat. 2 armor-piercing rounds, 1 incendiary and 1 tracer. It was a general-purpose mix designed to do a little bit of everything. It could punch through steel light, a little fire, and show you where you were shooting. The Navy loved it because it was safe, standardized, and easy to manufacture in the massive quantities that modern war demanded. Alex Carter hated it with the intensity of a man who had watched friends die because good enough was the enemy of perfect. "I do not want the tracers," Alex told the armorer, his voice low and intense. Martinez sighed, rubbing his temples with oil-stained fingers. He had had this conversation a dozen times with the obsessive lieutenant who could not leave well enough alone. But tonight was different. Tonight, Martinez's younger brother Joseph had been dead for exactly 3 weeks, killed by a Zero that refused to die despite being hit by 200 rounds of standard Navy ammunition, the kind of ammunition that made holes but not coffins for the enemy. This is the story of how obsession with precision defeated protocol. How a mechanic's son honored his dead father by refusing to accept good enough when better was possible. How invisible ammunition burned the sky clean. How a forgotten innovation changed naval warfare forever. If you or someone you love understands that sometimes breaking rules is the only way to keep promises made to dead fathers and fallen brothers, this story honors that truth. Like and subscribe before these memories disappear into the silence that eventually takes all warriors, all innovators, all the men who dared to question when questioning was called insubordination. Detroit, Michigan, July 23, 1935. Alexander Carter, age 14, sat on greasy concrete, watching his father, Henry Carter, age 42, die from a mistake made 3 days earlier. The summer heat was making everything worse. No air conditioning in the small garage, just flies circling in lazy patterns and the smell of motor oil mixing with quiet terror. Henry was lying on a cot in the back office of Carter's Auto Repair. His face had gone from healthy tan to a gray color that reminded Alex of old newspaper. His breathing was shallow, each inhale requiring visible effort, each exhale sounding like a tire slowly leaking air. The doctor had left an hour ago, saying there was nothing more to do. Infection from a cut on the right palm. A tiny cut barely noticed at the time, but the cut had come from a rusty bolt on a Packard engine Henry was rebuilding. A bolt Henry had meant to replace but forgot because the customer was rushing him, because money was tight during the Depression, and you could not afford to lose customers by being too slow or too careful or too particular about details. The wound had turned red on the first day, purple on the second, black on the third. Blood poisoning, the doctor called it. Septicemia, he said, using the medical term, as if Latin could somehow soften the brutality of bacteria multiplying faster than the body could fight. There were no antibiotics available in 1935, small-town Michigan. Penicillin existed somewhere in research laboratories where men in white coats were unlocking the secrets of mold and medicine. But it was not available for mechanics who had $8 in the bank and a garage nobody wanted to inherit. Alex held his father's hand. The skin felt hot and dry like paper left too long in the sun. Henry opened his eyes. They were the same blue eyes Alex saw in the mirror every morning, but now they were clouded with pain and regret and a desperate need to communicate something important before it was too late. He tried to speak. His lips moved, but no sound came. Too weak. The infection had stolen his strength. His voice everything except the awareness that he was leaving his son alone with a lesson written in blood. Henry squeezed Alex's hand. 3 squeezes. Their code established years ago during a camping trip when they had practiced silent communication in case they ever needed to signal each other across distance. 3 meant I love you. Alex squeezed back. 4 squeezes. Their code for I love you too, and I will remember everything you taught me. Henry's lips moved again. This time a whisper emerged so faint that Alex had to lean close his ear, almost touching his father's mouth. Check everything twice, son. Never rush, never assume. 1 missed bolt kills. Henry James Carter died at 4:17 post-meridian. Alex sat there until dark, still holding the hand that had taught him how to grip a wrench, how to time an engine, how to take pride in work done correctly. His mother finally came at sunset, found him sitting on the floor next to the cot, whispering the same sentence over and over, like a prayer, or an oath, or a binding promise to a ghost. I will never forget to check. I will never cut corners. I will never let rushing kill what I love. The funeral was held on July 26th. It was a small service. 20 people scattered among pews that could hold 200. A few friends showed up. Most of the customers who owed money did not attend. The pastor talked about Henry being a devoted father and a skilled tradesman, but he did not mention that Henry had died because he forgot to replace a 50-cent bolt. Because good enough is the enemy of perfect, and good enough had killed him, leaving a widow and a son with nothing except a garage nobody wanted and tools nobody could afford. After the service, Alex went to the garage alone. His father's toolbox was still open on the workbench. The half-rebuilt Packard engine was still mounted on the stand, frozen in time, waiting for a mechanic who would never return. Alex picked up a wrench, his father's favorite. 10 millimeter. The chrome was worn smooth from decades of use, the handle shaped by thousands of hours of gripping, adjusted perfectly to Henry Carter's hand and no one else's. He held it like a holy relic. Then Alex made a promise to the wrench, to his father, to himself. A promise in 3 parts, as binding as wedding vows, as permanent as tombstones. First, I will never forget to check. Second, I will never cut corners, even when the customer is rushing, even when money is desperate, even when everyone is saying that good enough is acceptable. Third, I will never let anyone die from my mistakes the way my father died from his. Alex took the wrench home. He kept it for the rest of his life. In his toolbox during training, in his locker on the Lexington, in his desk drawer when he became a banker, on his nightstand when he died. That 10-millimeter wrench that had killed his father became a talisman, preventing the son from making the same error. It was heavy with guilt, heavy with promise, heavy with love, expressed through obsessive verification. From age 14 through 18, Alex became obsessed with precision. He could not just fix things. He had to understand why they had broken in the first place, what chain of small failures had led to catastrophic collapse, what invisible margins separated success from disaster. He took apart radios and studied the circuitry, tracing signal paths with his finger. He disassembled clocks and measured gear tolerances with calipers borrowed from the high school shop class. He fixed neighbors' lawnmowers and then improved the carburetor settings beyond factory specifications because factory specifications were designed for average conditions, and Alex refused to accept average when optimal was achievable. The neighbors started bringing him their broken items because Alex Carter does it right the first time, unlike most mechanics who patch things together and hope the repair holds long enough for the customer to leave. His mother worried a boy should be playing baseball in empty lots, should be chasing girls at soda fountains, should be normal whatever normal meant in Depression-era Michigan, where normal increasingly meant hungry and desperate and broken. But normal had died with his father. What remained was a boy who understood that mistakes killed people you loved, that good enough was a lie told by people who had never buried anyone, that precision was the only protection against the randomness of a universe that took fathers on Tuesday afternoons in summer heat. That promise made to a wrench in an empty garage would save 400 American lives 9 years later. But first, it would almost get Alex court-martialed. Alex graduated high school in June of 1939. He finished at the top of his class in mathematics and science. The teachers told him he should go to engineering college, make something of himself, escape the cycle of grease and poverty that had killed his father. But there was no money for college. The Depression was still choking the country like a slow strangulation. His mother was working 2 jobs, barely keeping their small apartment. College was a dream for people who could afford dreams. In the fall of 1939, Alex got a job at Consolidated Aircraft outside Detroit. They were building B-24 Liberator bombers for a war everyone knew was coming, even if the politicians were still pretending peace was possible. He started as a riveter. It was the lowest job in the factory hierarchy, 14-hour days standing at a frame station. His hands bled from holding the bucking bar, the heavy steel tool that backed up rivets, while the pneumatic gun hammered them into place. The noise was constant, deafening, a mechanical thunder that made conversation impossible and thought difficult. But Alex learned. He watched the engineers. He studied the blueprints spread out on tables in the climate-controlled offices where men in clean shirts made decisions that would be executed by men in dirty overalls. He asked questions until the foreman told him to shut up and rivet. What Alex learned was that aircraft are machines where every detail matters. A rivet installed at the wrong angle means structural failure at altitude when stress concentrates at the weak point. A fuel line connected with sloppy technique means fire consuming the crew before they can reach for their parachutes. A control cable tensioned incorrectly means the pilot losing authority over his aircraft, plummeting into the ocean with full understanding of the mistake but no ability to correct it. Every shortcut was a death sentence waiting to happen. Every corner cut was a name waiting to be added to a casualty list. Every good enough was a telegram waiting to be delivered to a mother who would never recover. His father's lesson applied perfectly to flying machines. In the summer of 1941, Alex met Elizabeth Thompson at the factory. Beth worked in quality control. Her job was inspecting rivets, making sure they met specifications before the aircraft moved to the next station. Most quality control inspectors were lazy. They understood that time was money, and inspection slowed production. They checked every 10th rivet, assumed the rest were acceptable, signed off on work they had not actually verified, collected their paychecks, and went home with clear consciences. Beth checked every rivet, every single one, without exception, because she understood that this bomber would carry 10 men, and those 10 men had families, and those families deserved to know that every rivet had been installed correctly by someone who cared whether they lived or died. Alex noticed her, a girl who took the work seriously, who understood that details mattered, who got it in a way that most people never would. They started talking during lunch breaks. Not flirting, at least not obviously. Just talking about engineering, about tolerances, about why American planes needed to be better than German planes, not just more numerous. Their first real conversation was about fuel tanks. Alex mentioned that the B-24 fuel tanks were vulnerable despite the rubber self-sealing technology. The sealant was too slow. An enemy incendiary bullet could ignite fuel vapor before the rubber sealed the hole. Beth agreed immediately. She said she had been thinking the same thing. She said the Japanese Zero fighters in the Pacific had an even worse problem. No self-sealing tanks at all. The Japanese had stripped them out for weight savings, trading protection for speed and range. That meant the Zero was a flying gasoline bomb. One incendiary hit in the right location and the entire plane would become a fireball. Alex filed that information away in his mind. He did not know then that 3 years later, that specific piece of knowledge would save his life and define his legacy. He just knew that he was talking to a girl who understood that details mattered because people mattered. They dated through the fall of 1941. Nothing fancy, money was still tight. They walked around the factory grounds during breaks. They shared sandwiches from home, simple food wrapped in wax paper. They talked about planes and precision and what kind of life they wanted to build after the war that everyone knew was coming. On a Sunday in November of 1941, Alex invited Beth to dinner at his mother's apartment. It was a small place, clean but modest. His mother was nervous because this was the first girl Alex had brought home since his father died. She wanted to make a good impression. She wanted to know if this factory girl was good enough for her son, who could have picked someone from a better family with more money. She spent all of Saturday preparing food. She spent Sunday morning cooking. The table was set with the good dishes that had been saved from before Henry died. White tablecloth ironed until every crease was sharp. Silverware polished until it reflected light like mirrors. This was an evaluation disguised as a meal. Alex's mother was testing whether Beth understood what mattered. The food appeared in stages, each dish a demonstration of precision applied to cooking. First came fried chicken. Golden brown pieces emerged from the cast iron skillet that had been seasoned by 20 years of Sunday dinners. Each piece had been fried for exactly 3 minutes per side. Not 2 minutes and 50 seconds. Not 3 minutes and 10 seconds. 3 minutes precisely. The timing mattered. His mother had learned from Henry that precision in cooking was like precision in engine repair. Close enough killed the result. The crispy coating crackled when the chicken was placed on the platter. The sound was like thin ice breaking on a pond. Steam rose from the tender meat beneath, carrying a smell that filled the small apartment, rich and savory and promising. This was Depression-era cooking. Make the chicken stretch. Make every piece count. Make the meal memorable because it might be a while before they could afford chicken again. Next came mashed potatoes, smooth as silk. Real potatoes, not the powder that some families were using to save money. They had been boiled for exactly 12 minutes until a fork could pierce them with no resistance, then mashed with butter and cream until absolutely no lumps remained. Alex's mother believed that lumpy potatoes were a sign of a careless cook. Real butter melting into a golden pool at the center. Butter was expensive. Using real butter instead of lard was a statement. It was showing Beth that this family had standards even when money was tight. Green beans from the Victory Garden behind the apartment building. Picked that morning while dew was still on the leaves. Cooked with a small piece of bacon for flavor. Not overcooked into gray mush like some cooks did. Cooked for exactly 8 minutes until tender, but still breaking. Still with texture. Still with dew. Cornbread baked in a cast iron skillet. Golden brown on top. Slightly sweet from the tablespoon of honey added to the batter. Crumbly but not dry. His mother's secret was the honey. It made the cornbread special. Made it something you remembered long after the meal ended. The cornbread was served hot with butter melting into golden rivers between the crumbs. Sweet tea sweating in tall glasses. Ice cubes melting slowly. His mother had brewed the tea with a precise ritual developed over years. 8 tea bags, 4 cups of boiling water, steep for exactly 4 minutes. Add 1 cup of sugar while the tea was still hot so the sugar dissolved completely. Add 3 cups of cold water. Never add sugar after the tea had cooled. That left undissolved sugar settling at the bottom, turning into sludge. Proper sweet tea required precision and sequence and patience. Apple pie was cooling on the windowsill. The smell competed with the fried chicken for dominance of the small apartment. The apples had come from Eastern Market, peeled with care, sliced exactly 1/4 inch thick. Not thicker or thinner, 1/4 inch precisely, tossed with cinnamon and sugar and a touch of lemon juice to brighten the flavor. The crust was made from lard. 3 parts flour to 1 part lard. Cut together until the texture resembled coarse sand. Ice water added 1 tablespoon at a time until the dough just held together. Too much water made tough crust. Too little made crumbly crust. Precision mattered in pie construction, like precision mattered in everything. Alex sat at the table thinking, this is America. Not the flag, not the anthem, not the abstract patriotism that politicians sold during election cycles. This table laden with food prepared with love and precision. This family gathered together without fear. This abundance that half the world could not afford and the other half was losing to dictators who promised everything and delivered death. This is what America meant when you stripped away the rhetoric. It meant family eating together without needing permission from the government. It meant enough food that sharing was possible. It meant freedom to gather and talk and laugh without fear that neighbors would report you for wrong opinions. It meant chicken fried in lard and potatoes mashed with real butter while millions starved under flags that promised paradise and delivered hell. His mother asked Beth about her work. Beth explained quality control. She explained checking every rivet instead of sampling. His mother nodded with understanding gleaming in her eyes. That is how I cook, Alex's mother said. Check everything, measure everything, time everything. People think cooking is art. It is not art. It is science. It is precision. You undercook the chicken and people get sick. You overcook the chicken and people are disappointed. You do it exactly right and people remember. Beth said, that is how I inspect rivets. People think one rivet does not matter. It matters completely. The plane has 10,000 rivets. Each one holds load. Each one prevents crack propagation. Each one keeps the bomber flying long enough for the crew to come home. You cannot check just some. You must check all. Alex's mother smiled. The test was over. The verdict was in. This girl understands, she said, looking at Alex with approval that meant more than any spoken blessing. After dinner, Alex and Beth walked around the block. The November evening was cold. Detroit winter was approaching with the inevitability of all seasonal change. Mother approves, Alex said. Good, Beth replied, because I approve too. Of you, of what you stand for, of precision mattering, of details being how you love. Alex stopped walking, turned to face her under a streetlight that cast long shadows. After the war, after I come back, will you marry me? Beth looked at him with eyes that understood what he was really asking. He was asking if she would wait, if she would believe his promise to survive, if she would build a life with a man who checked everything twice because his father had died from checking only once. You have to come back first, Beth said. You have to survive. I will do everything possible to survive, Alex said. I will check everything twice. I will verify. I will be precise. I will keep my promise. Then yes, Beth said. After the war, after you come back, I will marry you. They married on December 27th, 1941. 3 weeks after Pearl Harbor turned the distant war into America's war. It was a simple ceremony, justice of the peace. 2 witnesses pulled from the factory floor. No honeymoon because Alex was enlisting in January, and time was a luxury they could not afford. Beth went back to the factory building bombers while her husband learned to fly fighters. Both of them were making promises. Beth promised to build perfect planes. Alex promised to fly them perfectly. Both promised to survive the war and build a life together after. Both understood that promises were kept through precision, through checking everything twice, through never accepting good enough when perfect was achievable. That understanding would save hundreds of lives. But first it would get Alex called crazy. Naval Air Station, Pensacola, Florida, March of 1942. Alex began flight training in a Navy that needed pilots desperately after Pearl Harbor had sunk half the Pacific Fleet. The Navy was pushing cadets through faster than safe. The focus was volume over quality. Get them flying, get them shooting, get them to the Pacific before Japan conquered everything worth conquering. Alex clashed with the instructors immediately. Not because he lacked skill, he was one of the best natural pilots in his class, but he had too much skill and too many questions. He wanted to know why control inputs were taught this specific way, why gunnery deflection was calculated using this particular method, Why the standard ammunition mix was 2 armor-piercing, 1 incendiary, 1 tracer instead of a different ratio optimized for specific targets. The instructors hated questions. They hated cadets who thought instead of obeying. This is how we do it. This is how the Navy does it. This is how everyone does it. Stop thinking. Start doing. Shut up and fly. But Alex could not shut up, could not stop thinking, because his father had died from not thinking, from accepting this is how we do it without questioning whether the established method was actually the best method or just the method that had always been used because no one had bothered to test alternatives. The instructors wrote reports. Cadet Carter is a skilled pilot but insubordinate, questions everything, does not accept authority, recommend washout for attitude problems. But his test scores were too high to ignore. His gunnery was too accurate to waste. His carrier landings were too precise to throw away. The Navy needed pilots. It could not afford to wash out a top performer just because he asked annoying questions that made instructors feel defensive. Alex graduated from flight school in June of 1942. He was commissioned as an ensign. He was assigned to advanced fighter training. He learned to fly the F-6F Hellcat. It was a big, heavy American fighter, the opposite of the nimble Japanese Zero. The Hellcat was a flying tank, armored, self-sealing fuel tanks. It could absorb punishment that would destroy lighter aircraft. But it was slow to turn, slow to climb. The tactics were clear. Use speed, use diving attacks. Never try to dogfight a Zero. Boom and zoom, hit and run, survive through superior energy management. Alex studied the Hellcat's armament system, 6 Browning 50 caliber machine guns, 3 mounted in each wing. The standard loadout was 400 rounds per gun. Total ammunition capacity of 2,400 rounds. The belting was mixed, 2 armor-piercing, 1 incendiary, 1 tracer. The pattern repeated until the belt was complete. Alex questioned the specification. Why tracers? Tracers had a different ballistic coefficient than armor-piercing rounds. They flew a different trajectory at long range because the burning compound changed their weight distribution. That meant the tracers were showing impact points that did not match where the armor-piercing bullets were actually hitting. The tracer was essentially lying about your aim. Plus, tracers burned out after a certain distance, becoming useless beyond effective range. Plus, tracers told the enemy exactly where you were shooting from. They were a glowing advertisement saying, "Here I am, please shoot back at these coordinates." The instructor said tracers let you see where you were shooting. They let you adjust your aim based on visual feedback. They were essential for pilots learning to lead moving targets. Alex said pilots should learn to aim correctly from the beginning without relying on a crutch that provided false information. They should learn the physics of bullet trajectory. They should learn to lead targets properly using mathematics instead of glowing bullets that lied. The argument went up the chain of command. Lieutenant Carter thinks he knows better than the Navy Department. He thinks decades of accumulated knowledge are wrong. Recommend additional attitude counseling. But Alex had one advantage that the instructors did not know about. He had Beth. His wife, working at the aircraft factory, had access to intelligence reports about Japanese aircraft construction. She sent him letters describing Zero construction in technical detail. No armor plating protecting the pilot. No self-sealing fuel tanks. Magnesium alloy construction throughout the airframe for weight savings. The Zero was essentially a flying matchstick wrapped in gasoline-soaked paper. Alex realized something the instructors did not understand. The standard ammunition mix was designed to be general purpose, designed to fight a variety of targets, designed to be adequate against everything but optimized for nothing. But if you knew your specific target, if you knew the exact weakness you were trying to exploit, you could optimize your ammunition loadout for that specific vulnerability. The Zero's weakness was fire. It had no protection against incendiary attack. Armor-piercing rounds would punch clean holes through the thin aluminum skin. The plane would leak. The plane would be damaged. But the plane would limp home. The pilot would survive. The aircraft would be repaired. It would fight again tomorrow. But incendiary rounds that ignited on impact, that burned at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit, that turned fuel vapor into explosions, those rounds would not poke holes. Those rounds would turn the Zero into a fireball. The pilot would not survive. The aircraft would not be repaired. It would not fight tomorrow. Alex requested a meeting with the armament officer. He proposed a new ammunition mix: 100% M8 API, armor-piercing incendiary, no tracers, no standard ball ammunition, just fire, just chemical destruction that would burn everything it touched. The armament officer said no. The proposal was too dangerous. M8 rounds were unstable. If a gun jammed and the barrel overheated, the rounds could cook off inside the wing. The detonation would blow the pilot's arm off. This violated regulations. This violated safety protocols. This violated everything the Navy knew about ammunition handling. Alex argued. He said he would sign a waiver. He said he understood the risks. He said it was better to risk losing an arm than to risk losing your life because your ammunition was inadequate. The armament officer said no. End of discussion. Fly with the standard loadout or do not fly at all. Alex flew with the standard loadout, for now, but he kept studying, kept calculating, kept writing letters to Beth asking for more intelligence about zero construction. He was building a case, gathering data, waiting for an opportunity. That opportunity would come, but first someone would have to die to prove Alex was right. Alex was promoted to lieutenant junior grade in December of 1942. He was assigned to VF-16 Fighter Squadron. They were deploying to the USS Lexington CV-16, a new carrier replacing the original Lexington that had been sunk at Coral Sea. The squadron was preparing for combat deployment to the Pacific Theater. Final training happened at San Diego before they sailed into the war. The squadron mates gave Alex a nickname. They called him the Watchmaker. It was not an affectionate nickname, it was mockery. Because Alex spent hours in the armory studying ammunition instead of playing cards with the other pilots. Because he spent hours in the maintenance hangar studying the guns instead of drinking beer. Because he kept asking the crew chiefs about jam rates and heat dissipation and optimal barrel temperature. Officers did not do this. Officers flew the planes. Enlisted men maintained them. Crossing that boundary was weird. Alex was weird. They mocked him at meals. Hey, watchmaker, you planning to fly the plane or rebuild it from scratch? Hey, watchmaker, you want to load your own ammunition too while you are bothering everyone. Maybe you should be a mechanic instead of a pilot. There was always laughter. Alex ignored it. He had learned to ignore mockery. Because laughter stopped mattering when you had watched your father die from a mistake that could have been prevented if someone had asked questions instead of accepting how things had always been done. In January of 1943, the Lexington sailed for the Pacific. Alex brought one item from home that violated regulations: his father's 10mm wrench. He wrapped it in a sock, hid it at the bottom of his sea bag. It was a talisman, a reminder, a promise to a dead father that precision still mattered even in the chaos of war. The first combat mission happened in March of 1943. They were escorting bombers attacking a Japanese airfield at Rabaul. Alex saw Zeros for the first time in combat. They were fast, agile, deadly, beautiful machines that danced through the sky like nothing American factories could build. The squadron lost 2 planes. Alex survived by following the tactics exactly. Boom and zoom. He did not try to dogfight. He used the Hellcat's superior speed and power, but he was frustrated by the results. He shot at a 0. He saw his tracers hit. He counted impacts. 27 rounds connected with the target. The 0 smoked. The 0 wobbled. But the 0 flew away. It returned to base damaged but intact. The pilot survived. The plane would be repaired. It would fight again tomorrow. After landing, Alex went to the intelligence section and studied his gun camera footage. He counted the hits precisely. 27 rounds. The 0 should be dead. Should have exploded or crashed or done something other than flying home. Standard ammunition was not efficient. It was wasting bullets. It was letting enemies escape. It was failing at the fundamental task of removing threats from the battlefield. He talked to the intelligence officer, asked about 0 survivability rates. The officer showed him reports that confirmed Alex's suspicions. 0s frequently returned to base with dozens of bullet holes. They were self-repairing. They were flying again the next day. American pilots were frustrated. It felt like shooting ghosts, like the bullets passed through without effect. Alex asked about incendiary ammunition effectiveness. The officer said there was limited data. Few pilots used high concentrations of incendiaries. Most used the standard mix, but the anecdotal reports suggested that incendiary hits were significantly more effective. Japanese planes burned easier than American planes because they had no fire suppression systems. Alex filed another report, recommended testing high incendiary loadouts. The report went nowhere. The Navy had bigger problems than one lieutenant's ammunition theories. There was a war to fight, carriers to build, islands to invade. The bureaucracy could not waste time testing unproven theories from a junior officer with documented attitude problems. Between March and May of 1943, Alex flew 22 combat missions. He shot at 14 different Zeros during various engagements. His confirmed kills totaled 2 aircraft. His probable kills totaled 4. His damaged but escaped total was 8. The mathematics disappointed him. He was using 2,400 rounds of ammunition to kill 2 planes. That was 1,200 rounds per kill. The math said this was inefficient, wasteful, wrong. In May, the squadron got a new pilot, Ensign Thomas Bradford, age 21, fresh from the same training pipeline Alex had completed. Bradford was eager, confident. He reminded Alex of himself, except Bradford followed the protocols. He trusted the instructors. He believed in the standard ammunition mix because the Navy said it was the right mix, and the Navy had been fighting wars since 1775. They flew together on May 20th during an escort mission. They encountered 6 Zeros protecting a formation of bombers. Bradford got separated from the formation. He chased a Zero into a cloud bank. Alex followed, trying to provide support. Alex heard Bradford on the radio. "I am on him. I am firing. I am hitting him. He keeps flying. Why is he not going down?" Alex caught up. He saw Bradford's Zero. It was trailing smoke from multiple hits. But the Zero was still flying, still turning, still dangerous. Bradford was out of ammunition. He had expended his entire load, all 2,400 rounds. The Zero was damaged but not destroyed. Bradford had to break off the engagement. The Zero escaped. Alex had a few rounds of M8 that he had secretly loaded by bribing an armorer with a bottle of whiskey. He lined up a shot on the damaged Zero. He fired a short burst, maybe 40 rounds total. The Zero exploded, not gradually, instantly. 1 second it was an airplane trailing smoke. The next second it was a fireball tumbling end over end toward the ocean. After they landed, Bradford found Alex on the flight deck. "What ammunition were you using?" "Those were not standard tracers. That plane blew up like a bomb." Alex explained his theory about M8 incendiary rounds, about optimizing for the specific vulnerability of targets that had no fire protection. "Can I get the same loadout?" Bradford asked. "The armorer will not approve it," Alex said. "It is against regulations." "Then how did you get it?" "Persuasion and whiskey," Alex said. Bradford tried. He requested authorization for an alternate ammunition loadout. The armorer refused. Too dangerous. Regulations existed for good reasons. Bradford tried appealing to the squadron commander. Permission denied. Regulations could not be changed for individual preferences. Fly with the standard loadout or do not fly at all. Bradford flew his next mission with standard ammunition. He encountered another Zero. He fired 600 rounds. The Zero escaped trailing smoke but still flying. Bradford was frustrated. He requested another meeting with the squadron commander. He asked again for permission to use Alex's ammunition mix. Again denied. On June 4, 1943, Ensign Thomas Bradford was killed in action. It happened during a dogfight with Zeros near Guadalcanal. Bradford chased an enemy fighter. He fired his entire ammunition load. He hit the target repeatedly. The Zero did not go down. Instead, it turned on Bradford, shot him. Bradford's Hellcat crashed into the ocean. His body was never recovered. He was 21 years old, married for 4 months. His wife was pregnant. She would give birth to a daughter who would never meet her father. The gun camera footage was reviewed during the investigation. It showed Bradford hitting the Zero at least 40 times with standard ammunition. The footage showed holes appearing in the Zero's wings, holes in the fuselage, smoke trailing. But the Zero kept flying, it kept turning. It killed Bradford before Bradford could escape. If Bradford had been using incendiary ammunition, would the Zero have burned? Would the Zero have died before it could turn and fire? Would Bradford be alive? Alex attended the memorial service. He did not speak, could not speak, because if he spoke, he would say that Bradford died because Navy regulations valued protocol over effectiveness, because the standard ammunition was the wrong tool for the job and everyone knew it, but admitting it meant admitting a mistake, and bureaucracies did not admit mistakes easily. After the service, Alex went to the ship's armory. He found Chief Petty Officer Robert Martinez. Martinez was 43 years old, career Navy, 25 years of loading guns and following regulations and doing everything by the book that defined proper procedure. But Martinez also had a younger brother, Corporal Joseph Martinez, age 24, serving with the Marine Raiders. Joseph had been killed 3 weeks earlier during an operation against a Japanese-held island. Killed by a Zero during a strafing run, while Joseph tried to shoot the plane down with his rifle. Joseph had hit the Zero 5 times with rifle bullets. They found the bullet holes in the wreckage later. 5 hits from close range. Any one of those hits should have caused a fire. The Zero used the same construction as the fighter Zeros, magnesium alloy. No fire suppression. It should have burned. It did not burn. It kept flying long enough to strafe Joseph. Joseph died. Your brother died because the Zero did not burn when hit. Alex said to Martinez, Thomas Bradford died because the Zero did not burn when hit. Standard ammunition makes holes. Holes are not enough. We need fire. We need M8. We need to kill them before they kill us. Martinez said regulations forbid full M8 loadout. Too dangerous, too unstable. Alex said, what is more dangerous, following regulations that get pilots killed, or breaking regulations that save lives? They looked at each other. 2 men who had lost people to Zeros that refused to die. Martinez thought about his brother Joseph, about Bradford, about all the pilots who would die tomorrow because protocol valued safety over effectiveness. If I load your guns with M8, Martinez said slowly, if something goes wrong, if the rounds cook off and blow your wing off, they will court-martial me if you do not load my guns with M8, Alex said, and I die because the standard ammunition fails. Can you live with that? Martinez did not answer immediately. He stood in the armory surrounded by ammunition belts and regulations and the weight of decisions that would echo through the rest of his life. Finally, he spoke. I can give you 75% M8, 25% armor piercing for structural penetration. No tracers. That is the compromise. That is the most dangerous thing I have ever agreed to do. If you die, your wife will hate me. If you blow yourself up, the Navy will hang me. If it works, Alex said, will you load the same for other pilots? If it works, Martinez said, I will not need to. Other pilots will demand it. But it has to work first. You are the test case. You are the guinea pig. Do not screw this up. They shook hands. The deal was made. Innovation was approved through unofficial channels. Breaking regulations to keep promises. That was how things got done when the regulations were wrong. That handshake would change the war. But first, Alex would have to prove it worked. He would have to survive the largest air battle in history, and he would have to do it tomorrow. USS Lexington, June 18, 1944. The ship was operating near the Mariana Islands. Intelligence had reported major Japanese fleet movements. Carriers had been spotted. Aircraft had been counted. It looked like Japan was preparing a massive strike, the biggest air attack since Pearl Harbor. Everyone knew that tomorrow would be the critical battle. Win or lose, the Pacific campaign might be decided. The evening briefing started at 1800 hours. Commander Richard Shaw stood at the map. He was a veteran of Midway, a man who had seen the impossible happen, had watched outnumbered American pilots destroy 4 Japanese carriers in a single day. Intelligence estimates 450 Japanese aircraft will attack tomorrow, Shaw said. Every plane they have, everything that can fly, the carriers will empty themselves. Our job is to intercept. Destroy as many as possible before they reach the fleet. Expect heavy combat. Expect casualties. Expect to earn every dollar the Navy pays you. The pilots were nervous, 450 planes. The squadron had 24 Hellcats. Even with other squadrons from other carriers, the Americans would be outnumbered. It would be a swarm, a desperate fight. After the briefing, Alex went to the flight deck. The sun was setting over the Pacific. The ocean was calm, beautiful. The evening did not match the mood. Tomorrow men would die. The question was how many and which names would be added to the casualty lists. He looked at his Hellcat. Bureau number 40467. The crew chief had painted a name on the cowling. Beth's Fire. Alex had requested permission, arguing that personalizing aircraft improved morale and maintenance quality. The real reason was a promise to his wife. If he died, he wanted Beth's name on the plane. He wanted his last thought before death to be about the woman who understood why details mattered. He walked around the plane checking everything. The crew chief approached. "Lieutenant, the plane is ready. I inspected it this morning." "I know, Chief," Alex said. "Just checking." The crew chief smiled. "You always check. That is why you are still alive. Other pilots trust us to do our jobs. You verify our work. That is not an insult. That is smart. My father died because he did not check something that should have been checked." Alex said, "I will not make the same mistake." He went below decks to the armory. He found Martinez loading ammunition for the next day. 24 planes, 6 guns each, 144 guns total, 2,400 rounds per plane, 57,600 rounds total. Martinez and his crew had been loading since 1400 hours. They would load until midnight. It was precision work. You could not rush. A mistake meant a jam. A jam meant a dead pilot. "Is my loadout ready?" Alex asked. "Loaded this afternoon," Martinez said. 75% M8, 25% armor piercing. No tracers per your insane specifications. "But Lieutenant, I need to tell you something. Other pilots heard about Bradford. They heard about your M8 theory. 3 of them requested the same loadout. I denied them per regulations. They went to Commander Shaw. Shaw denied them. Regulations are regulations. But they are angry. They think the regulations will get them killed tomorrow when they face 450 Japanese planes. They might be right." Alex thought about this. If tomorrow goes well, if M8 proves effective in a large engagement, will you reconsider loading it for other pilots? "If you survive tomorrow with the M8 loadout," Martinez said, "and if you kill enough Japanese to prove the theory works at scale, I will load the entire squadron with M8, and I will dare anyone to try to stop me. But you have to survive. You have to prove it. We cannot change policy based on theory. We need results written in smoke and wreckage." "Tomorrow you will have results," Alex said. "I hope so," Martinez said, "because my brother died to a zero that should have burned. Because Bradford died to a zero that should have burned. Because if your theory is correct, my brother and Bradford died because I was too scared of regulations to break them when breaking them would have saved lives. That guilt is heavy. Tomorrow you have a chance to prove the regulations were wrong. Do not waste it." They shook hands again. The same handshake as the year before, but weighted differently now. This was not just about Alex anymore. This was about Joseph and Bradford and all the names that would be added tomorrow if the ammunition failed. Alex left the armory. He walked to the mess hall. The other pilots were eating dinner. The Navy always served steak before big missions. It was a tradition, a last meal for some. Alex sat alone, not because he was antisocial, because he was thinking. Tomorrow was the test. Tomorrow would prove his theory or prove that Alex was a fool who broke regulations for nothing. Tomorrow men would live or die based on ammunition choice. The pressure felt physical, crushing. He could not sleep that night. He spent the hours in the ready room studying maps, aircraft identification silhouettes, ballistics tables. He calculated engagement ranges. He calculated optimal firing distances for M8 effectiveness. Every detail mattered. Every calculation could mean the difference between life and death. At 0400 on June 19th, Martinez entered the ready room. It was unexpected. The armorer should be sleeping before the big day. Martinez sat down. He looked exhausted. "I need to tell you something," Martinez said, "about Joseph, about why I finally agreed to load M8 despite the regulations." Alex waited. "Joseph died on May 24th, Martinez said. Guadalcanal. A zero strafed his position. Joseph shot at it with his rifle. 5 hits at close range. We found the bullet holes in the wreckage later. 5 hits. Any one of those should have caused a fire. The Zero used the same construction as the Fighter Zeros, magnesium alloy. No fire suppression systems. It should have burned. It did not burn. It kept flying. It strafed Joseph. Joseph died. After Joseph died, I got his personal effects. There was a letter he had written the night before he was killed. The letter said this: Rob, if I die tomorrow, it will probably be to a zero because our ammunition cannot kill them fast enough. We hit them. They keep flying. They kill us while we reload. Tell the Navy we need better ammunition. Tell them Marines are dying because bullets make holes instead of fires. Tell them to fix this. I did not tell the Navy. I was too scared of regulations, too scared of court-martial. I stayed quiet. Then Bradford died the same way. Hit a zero 40 times with standard ammunition. The zero kept flying, killed Bradford. I could have prevented that death. I could have loaded Bradford with M8 when he requested it. I chose not to. Bradford's death is my fault. So when you asked for M8, when you pushed me, part of me wanted to refuse again. Follow the regulations. Stay safe. But I realized that staying safe means more pilots die. The regulations were written by people who have never faced a zero in combat. The regulations are wrong. You are right. Tomorrow you carry M8 ammunition, not just for yourself. You carry it for Joseph. You carry it for Bradford. You carry it for every pilot who died because we were too scared to break rules that needed breaking. Alex absorbed the weight of this confession. He understood what Martinez was carrying. The guilt of a brother. The guilt of Bradford. The guilt of following regulations when regulations were wrong. If M8 works tomorrow, Alex said, if the kills are fast and clean, will you tell this story? Will you fight to change the regulations officially? If you prove it works, Martinez said, I will fight. I will testify. I will risk court-martial because Joseph deserves better than being forgotten. Bradford deserves better than dying for nothing. All of them deserve ammunition that actually works. After Martinez left, Alex sat alone in the ready room. The ship was quiet. Most of the crew was sleeping, preparing for the battle that would begin in hours. Alex thought about his father, about the 10-millimeter wrench, about the promise made in a garage 13 years ago, about Bradford, about Joseph, about all the names that accumulated like debt. He thought about Beth back in Detroit, still working at the factory, still inspecting every rivet, still keeping her own promise to build perfect planes. He wrote her a letter even though it could not be sent until after the mission. Censorship rules. But he needed to write it anyway, needed to say things in case he did not survive. Beth, tomorrow is the big day. I cannot tell you details, but you will read about it in newspapers if we succeed. I want you to know that everything I learned from you, every conversation about planes and precision and promises, it all matters tomorrow. You taught me to question, to verify, to never accept good enough when better was possible. Father taught the same lesson a different way. Both of you shaped me into who I am. If tomorrow goes wrong, if I do not come home, know that I died doing what I believed was right. I died trying to keep the promise I made to Father and to you. The promise to never accept good enough when better was achievable. I love you. I will try very hard to come home. But if I cannot, please know you made me a better man and a better pilot. Thank you for understanding why details matter. He sealed the letter, gave it to the chaplain. If I do not return, please mail this. The chaplain took the letter, nodded. See you tomorrow, Lieutenant. Yes, sir. Tomorrow. The hours passed slowly. Alex could not sleep. He studied his charts, went over the plan, visualized the engagement. Every detail mattered. Every calculation could mean life or death. At 0600, reveille sounded. The ship came alive. Men moving, engines starting, the smell of breakfast cooking in the galley. Alex went to the mess, forced himself to eat. Eggs and toast and coffee. The food was fuel. His stomach was too tight for taste. At 0700, the final briefing. Shaw stood at the map again. This is it, Shaw said. The Japanese are launching everything. Radar shows them forming up now. Estimated time of arrival between 0930 and 1000 hours. Your job is simple. Stop them. Kill as many as possible. Use your altitude. Use the sun. No heroics. No dogfighting. Just kills. Any questions? A pilot raised his hand. How many escorts? 50 to 70, Shaw said. Multiple waves, stacked formations. You will be outnumbered, but you have better aircraft, better training, better ammunition. Use your advantages. Alex thought about that last part. Better ammunition. Shaw did not know that Alex was flying with ammunition Shaw had not authorized. That secret would either save lives or end careers. Maybe both. The pilots filed out. Alex stayed behind. Permission to speak freely, Sir Shaw nodded. Standard ammunition is insufficient against zeros, Alex said. Request permission to authorize alternative loadouts for the squadron. We have discussed this, Shaw said. Regulations forbid experimental ammunition during combat operations. We cannot risk jamming the entire squadron's guns based on an unproven theory. The theory has been proven in my last 11 combat engagements, Alex said. 11 encounters with zeros. 9 confirmed kills, all using M8 incendiary. 0 malfunctions, 0 cook-offs. Your personal choice is your personal risk, Shaw said. I cannot authorize it for the squadron. This discussion is over. Alex left. He was frustrated, but not surprised. The Navy did not change quickly. Would not change until the theory was proven at scale, proven beyond doubt, proven in a way that made denial impossible. Today would provide that proof, if Alex survived. At 0800, he went to the flight deck, found Beth's fire waiting. The crew chief had completed the pre-flight inspection. The plane was ready. Alex climbed up, opened the gun bay access panels. He wanted to see the ammunition personally. Trust but verify. That was the lesson. He saw the silver tips of M8 rounds gleaming in their belts. 75% of the load. No tracers, just invisible fire waiting to be released. He verified the count, closed the panels, climbed into the cockpit. He started his pre-flight ritual, the checklist written in blood of pilots who had skipped steps and died. Fuel quantity check, fuel selector check, mixture check, propeller check, magnetos check, oil pressure check, oil temperature check, hydraulics check. He went through the entire list, 52 items, 52s. Every single one mattered. His father had died from skipping one step. Alex would not skip any. At 0930, the loudspeakers crackled. Pilots, man your aircraft. This is not a drill. Bogies inbound. Launch all fighters immediately. Alex was already strapped in. He hit the starter. The Pratt & Whitney engine roared to life. But the sound was wrong. The idle was rough. There was vibration in the stick. Oil pressure was fluctuating. Temperature was climbing. The crew chief ran up shouting over the engine noise. Sir, engine is running rough. Recommend abort. We can swap aircraft. Alex checked the gauges. Oil pressure was low but still in acceptable range. Temperature was high but not critical yet. The vibration was bad but not indicating imminent failure. He looked at the crew chief, shook his head. No time for a swap. The Japanese were 30 minutes away. Every fighter was needed. He would make the sick engine work. The crew chief looked doubtful but stepped back, pulled the chocks, signaled the deck officer. The deck officer looked at the engine smoking slightly, looked at Alex. Alex gave a thumbs up. The deck officer shrugged. After the catapult fired, the plane was the pilot's problem, not his. The catapult hooked to the aircraft. Steam built pressure. The deck officer raised his flag, paused, dropped it. The steam catapult fired with violent force. The Hellcat was thrown forward. G-forces crushed Alex into his seat. The plane rocketed down the short deck. It dipped toward the water at the end, the heavy fuel load and ammunition fighting against gravity and lift. For a split second, it looked like the heavy vibrating plane with the sick engine was going to splash into the Pacific and sink before the battle even started. Then the big propeller bit into the humid air. The Hellcat clawed its way upward, skimming 10 feet above the waves. Slowly climbing, the engine was coughing. Oil was smearing the windshield, but the plane was flying. Barely. Alex retracted the landing gear, retracted the flaps, settled into a climb. 1,000 feet per minute. It should have been 2,000. The sick engine was costing him performance. But he was alive. He was airborne. That was enough for a start. He climbed toward 20,000 feet. It took 15 minutes. Should have taken 8. The engine temperature was pegged at the red line. Oil pressure was dropping. The vibration was getting worse. The plane wanted to quit, wanted to give up, wanted to die. Alex talked to it, whispered encouragement like you would to a wounded animal. Not yet, not now, just a few more hours. Then you can die. But not yet, not with the Japanese coming. He leveled off at altitude, looked for his squadron, could not find them. The launch had been a scramble. Everyone was separated. He was going into the largest air battle in history alone. The radio crackled. Fighter Direction Officer speaking. Vector 270, Angels 20. Many bogeys. Repeat. Many bogeys. Very banana. Translation. Fly west, stay at 20,000 feet. Many enemies. This is not an exaggeration. Alex turned west, leveled at altitude, scanned the horizon. Then he saw it, a black cloud on the horizon. Not a weather cloud, an aircraft cloud. Hundreds of them, stacked in layers like a wedding cake made of aluminum and death. The bottom layer was torpedo bombers hugging the waves. The middle layers was dive bombers flying in loose formation. The top layers is Zeros buzzing like angry wasps, 50 of them at least. 50 enemy aircraft. One broken American Hellcat with a dying engine. Most pilots would have turned back, called for help, waited for the squadron. But Alex looked at that formation and did not see a threat. He saw sloppy flying. He saw green pilots who had replaced the veterans killed at Midway and Guadalcanal. He saw gaps in the formation, opportunities. He saw a target-rich environment. He saw a buffet. He checked his ammunition. M8 incendiary loaded and ready. Invisible fire waiting to be released. He checked his fuel, enough for 2 hours of combat. He checked his resolve, strengthened by his father, by Beth, by Joseph, by Bradford, by everyone who had died because good enough was not good enough. He was ready. 4 hours until launch, the intelligence officer had said. That was wrong. Launch had already happened. Now came the test. Now came the proof. Now came the 8 minutes that would change everything. Alex climbed above the Japanese formation. He needed altitude, needed the sun. In aerial combat, the sun is the only camouflage that matters. If you position the sun behind you, you become a ghost. The glare blinds enemy gunners, hiding your silhouette in a wash of blinding white light that makes targeting impossible. He clawed his way up to 24,000 feet. The supercharger was rattling in his ears like a bag of bolts in a dryer. The sick engine protested every foot of altitude gained. Oil temperature was beyond the red line now. The needle had pegged at maximum and was trying to go higher. But he made it. He was perched high above the Japanese formation like a hawk sitting on a telephone pole, looking down at a yard full of chickens that had no idea death was coming. The formation below him was massive. At least 50 aircraft in this cluster alone. The bombers were flying straight and level, droning toward the American fleet like they were on a Sunday drive through peaceful skies. They were relying on their numbers for safety. They assumed that no single American fighter would be stupid enough to dive into a swarm of 50 planes. They were wrong. Alex picked his first target. It was a Judy dive bomber drifting slightly off the left wing of the formation. The pilot was probably a kid, maybe 18 or 19, struggling to keep position in the turbulence created by dozens of aircraft flying too close together. Alex pushed the nose of the Hellcat down. The heavy American fighter dropped like a safe pushed out of a window. The airspeed indicator wound up fast. 300 knots, 350, 400. The vibration in the airframe smoothed out temporarily, replaced by the high-pitched scream of wind tearing over the wings. This was the moment of truth. Not for Alex, for his ammunition. The armorer had warned him. The experts had laughed. They said M8 incendiary rounds were too light, that they would tumble in flight, that they would not penetrate aluminum skin, that Alex was wasting his time and risking his life on a theory that had no basis in reality. If they were right, Alex was about to bounce a bunch of sparks off the enemy's wing and then get chewed up by 50 angry tail gunners who would fill the sky with lead. If he was right, something else was about to happen. He closed the distance. 2,000 yards. 1,000 yards. He did not fire yet. Most rookie pilots panicked at this point and started spraying lead from half a mile away, hitting nothing but empty sky and wasting ammunition on hope instead of certainty. Alex waited. He had to be sure. He needed to be close enough to see the rivets on the enemy plane. At 600 yards, the Judy filled his gun sight. He could see the pilot's head in the cockpit, probably scanning for threats, but looking in the wrong direction, looking behind instead of above, looking for a squadron instead of a single ghost. At 400 yards, Alex squeezed the trigger. He did not hold it down, he tapped it. A short, controlled burst lasting less than 1 second. Maybe 60 rounds total. The result was immediate and terrifying. The standard .50 caliber loadout usually poked holes in a plane trailing gray smoke as the enemy leaked fuel or coolant. You could track a damaged plane by the smoke trail. It would limp away, getting slower, losing altitude, sometimes making it home and sometimes not. But Alex's M8 load did not poke holes. It struck the Judy's wing route right where the fuel tanks lived, right where the Chinese designers had placed gallons of high-octane gasoline with no protection because protection meant weight and weight meant less range. The M8 rounds slammed through the thin aluminum skin and ignited instantly on impact. The chemical compound inside each bullet burned at 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It was not fire. It was a chemical reaction that turned metal into liquid and fuel vapor into explosion. There was no gradual smoke. There was no slow leak. There was just a sudden, violent eruption of orange fire that consumed the entire aircraft in less than a heartbeat. The Judy did not fall. It dissolved. One second it was an airplane with a pilot and a tail gunner in a future however brief. The next second it was a fireball tumbling end over end toward the ocean, pieces of burning aluminum fluttering away like leaves in autumn wind. The explosion was so bright that Alex could see the reflection of the flames on his own instrument panel. The light filled his cockpit. Magnesium alloy burning white hot, impossible to look at directly without hurting your eyes. The experts were wrong. The armorer was wrong. The people who had written the regulations were wrong. The M8 rounds were not unstable junk. They were magic. They turned the Hellcats guns into flamethrowers. They transformed bullets into lightning. Alex did not pause to admire his work. Speed was life. Altitude was money in the bank. He used the momentum of his dive to zoom back up trading speed for height, shooting back into the sun before the Japanese gunners could figure out where the attack had come from. He looked back. The formation was rippling. The Japanese pilots had seen their wingman explode into nothing, but they could not see the shooter. They were twisting their heads, scanning the sky, looking for a squadron, looking for a wolf pack of American fighters. They did not realize it was just one guy with a leaking engine and a bad attitude and ammunition that should not exist. Alex rolled over and dove again. Target number 2, another Judy dive bomber. This one was flying tight in the center of the pack. This was a harder shot. If Alex missed, he would overshoot and fly right into the sights of the Zeros circling above like sharks waiting for a mistake. He lined up the shot, ignoring the vibration in his sick engine, ignoring the oil smear on his windshield that was getting worse, restricting his vision to a small, clear patch on the side of the canopy. He came in from the high side, screaming down at 400 miles per hour. The rear gunner on the Judy saw him this time. A stream of small 7.7 millimeter bullets zipped past Alex's canopy, looking like angry fireflies, tracers glowing in the bright Pacific sun. Alex did not flinch, did not jink, did not break off. He held his course because deflection shooting required commitment. If you jerked the stick when the bullets came close, you ruined your aim and wasted the attack. He waited until the Japanese bomber filled his gun sight, until he could count the rivets, until he could see the gunner's face. Then he pressed the trigger. Another short burst, maybe 70 rounds total. The M8 incendiary bullets walked across the Judy's fuselage like a chainsaw cutting through wood. They hit the engine block. The oil ignited. The magnesium components in the engine cowling caught fire. The front of the Japanese bomber vanished in a sheet of white-hot flame. The propeller flew off, spinning away into the blue sky like a discarded toy. The bomber pitched up violently from the sudden loss of thrust and balance, then rolled over and fell, trailing a thick ribbon of black smoke that marked Alex's path through the sky like a signature written in destruction. 2 down. Less than 2 minutes elapsed since the first kill. Alex pulled up again, his engine groaning under the strain like an old man climbing stairs. He checked his ammunition counters. He had barely touched his reserves. He had destroyed 2 aircraft and spent less ammunition than most pilots use just to check their gun alignment before a mission. The watchmaker was cleaning house. But now the element of surprise was gone. The hive was awake and angry. The Zeros at the top of the formation rolled over and dove, trying to intercept the invisible attacker. They knew someone was up there in the sun. They were scanning the glare, waiting for the shadow to drop again. Fingers tense on triggers, ready to shred the American who had killed 2 of their bombers. Alex saw them coming. He saw the distinctive square wingtips of the Mitsubishi fighters. These were not the clumsy dive bombers. These were the killers, the fighters that had terrorized the Pacific for 2 years, the planes that American pilots had learned to fear and respect. They were fast, agile, deadly in the hands of veterans. But these were not veterans. Alex could tell from how they turned. Too wide, breaking formation too easily, flying with the sloppiness that came from inadequate training. The veterans who had attacked Pearl Harbor were dead, buried in the coral of Midway and Guadalcanal and a dozen other battles. These were the replacements. Kids with barely enough flight hours to land their planes, let alone fight a combat-hardened American ace in a Hellcat. They were making a fatal mistake. They were turning to engage him, exposing their bellies as they banked. They were offering him shots. They were treating this like a duel, assuming the American would play by the rules of dogfighting, turn and twist, and dance. But Alex was not interested in dancing. He was interested in execution, in removing threats, in proving that precision beat volume. He spotted a Zero that had separated from the group, trying to cut off his escape route. The Japanese pilot pulled his nose up, trying to hang on his propeller to get a shot. The maneuver bled energy. The Zero stalled. It hung motionless in the air for just a second, a sitting duck painted white against blue sky. Alex kicked his rudder and dropped the Hellcat's nose. He fell toward the stalled Zero, the wind screaming, the oil smearing the engine, rattling like it was trying to shake itself apart. The Japanese pilot realized his mistake too late. He tried to roll away, but physics was against him. A stalled aircraft does not roll quickly, does not roll at all. It just hangs and falls and waits for physics to reassert control. Alex squeezed the trigger. The hot belt cycled through his guns. The stream of incendiary rounds hit the Zero at the wing root, where the fuel tank was located, exactly where intelligence had said it would be, exactly where best letters had described. The Japanese plane had no armor plating, no self-sealing fuel tanks, no fire suppression system. It was a kite made of magnesium and gasoline, a flying bomb waiting for a spark. It was like striking a match in a room full of gasoline vapor. The Zero did not just burn, it disintegrated. It did not even look like a plane anymore. It looked like a firework, like a festival celebration, like something beautiful and terrible happening in the sky. Pieces of burning aluminum fluttered down toward the ocean, joining the wreckage of the two bombers already falling. 3 kills, 3 minutes. Alex was just getting warmed up. But as he pulled out of his dive, the G-forces crushing him into his seat, blood draining from his head toward his feet, vision graying at the edges, he saw a shadow fall over his cockpit. He looked up through the canopy. The rest of the Zeros were not watching anymore. They were diving, a dozen of them, coming down on him like an avalanche of steel and fury and vengeance. He was alone, low on energy. His engine was shaking so hard that the instrument panel was blurry. The turkey shoot was over. The brawl was about to begin, but Alex did not panic. Panic is a luxury for people who have altitude to spare. Alex was burning altitude like cash in a casino, and he had a dozen Zeros diving on his tail, hungry for revenge, and he had a wall of 50 Japanese bombers ahead, still trying to reach the American fleet. Most pilots in this situation would trigger fight or flight instinct. They would either turn and dogfight the Zeros, which was suicide because the Zero could outturn any American fleet. Or they would dive for the deck and run for home, which was cowardice, and would leave the bombers free to attack the fleet. Alex chose the third option. He chose the option. He knew something about the Hellcat that the Japanese did not know. The F-6F was heavy. It weighed as much as a loaded dump truck compared to the balsa wood construction of the Zero. In a climb, that weight was a penalty. The lighter Zero would zoom up faster, but in a dive, that weight was pure kinetic energy. Alex slammed the stick forward. The Hellcat did not just drop. It fell out of the sky like an anvil thrown from a rooftop. The speedometer needle whipped past 400 knots. The airframe was groaning under stress. The wings were flexing. Metal was complaining, but the plane held together. The Zeros tried to follow, but their lightweight airframes started to flutter and shake at those speeds. The fabric-covered control surfaces began to vibrate. The pilots had to pull back, had to slow down, had to watch the American fighter pull away from them in the dive. They could not keep up with the falling brick. Alex pulled out of the dive violently. The G-forces were crushing. His vision went gray, then darker. The pressure suit inflated, squeezing his legs and abdomen, trying to keep blood in his head. He maintained consciousness through force of will and training. He used that massive speed to hook underneath the Japanese bomber formation. It was a brilliant predatory move. By positioning himself directly below the enemy bombers, He used their own planes as a shield. The Zeros could not shoot at him without risking hitting their own Judy dive bombers. He had turned their numbers against them. He was now the fox in the henhouse, and the farmer could not shoot for fear of killing the chickens. Target number 4 was right above him. Another Judy belly exposed fat and slow, trudging along at 200 knots like it had all day to reach the target. Alex pulled the nose up. He was coming from the blind spot, the 6 o'clock low position where no gunner could see him, where no defensive fire could reach. The vibration in his engine was getting worse. It was a rhythmic hammering now, a sound that threatened to shake the instrument panel loose from its mounting. He had to time his trigger pulls between the shutters, waiting for the brief moments when the aircraft was relatively stable. He closed the distance. 300 yards. 200 yards. He tapped the trigger. The M8 incendiary round slammed into the Judy's belly fuel tank. The explosion was not a slow burn. It was instantaneous. The fuel vapor inside the empty space of the partially full tank ignited with the force of a bomb. The entire center section of the Japanese bomber blew outward, metal petals opening like a deadly flower. Alex had to wrench his stick to the left to avoid the shower of burning aluminum rain that cascaded down from above. Pieces of the destroyed aircraft tumbled past his canopy close enough to touch. He did not even watch it hit the water. He was already looking for the next target, already lining up kill number 5. The Japanese formation was beginning to panic now. They were breaking discipline. The neat rows were becoming ragged. Pilots were looking down, seeing the fireballs, seeing the smoke trails, but unable to see the ghost that was killing them from below. They started to weave, ruining their defensive overlapping fields of fire. They were making it easier for him. Fear was degrading their tactics. Kill number 5 tested his nerve in a different way. The pilot of the next Judy saw Alex coming. This one was a veteran, not a green replacement. He did not panic. He banked hard, trying to spoil Alex's aim, trying to force Alex to lead the target incorrectly. It was a good defensive move. It would have worked against most attackers. But Alex was not aiming at where the plane was. He was aiming at where the physics of motion said the plane had to be in 2 seconds when the bullets arrived. He kicked his rudder, skidding the Hellcat sideways through the air, leading the target like a duck hunter leading a bird. He pressed the trigger for a slightly longer burst, maybe a second and a half of fire. The stream of silver-tipped M8 rounds caught the Judy in the engine cowling. The magnesium flared white-hot. The oil lines ruptured and ignited. But this time the explosion did not happen underneath the plane or behind it. It happened right in Alex's face. The Japanese bomber blew up less than 100 yards directly in front of him. A cloud of black smoke, orange fire, and jagged metal fragments expanded instantly, blocking his entire field of view like a curtain being drawn. There was no time to turn, no time to climb, no time to think. Alex clenched his teeth and flew straight into the fireball. For a split second, his entire world was orange, the color of fire, the color of hell, the color of the space between life and death. The sound of debris hitting his wings was like gravel being thrown at a tin shed, metal fragments bouncing off metal skin, some pieces penetrating, most deflecting. The Hellcat shuddered as it punched through the cloud of destruction. Then he was through, emerged on the other side, still flying, still alive. He checked his wings. They were dented, the paint was scorched black, but they were still attached. The control surfaces still moved when he tested them. The engine was still coughing, still spitting, still rattling, but still turning, still pulling, still refusing to quit. 5 kills down. The sky behind him was littered with parachutes, white canopies opening like jellyfish blooming in water. Japanese pilots who had bailed out, floating down toward the Pacific, where they would be picked up by submarines or destroyers or left to drift until sharks found them. Alex scanned the sky. The Zeros were furious now. They had abandoned the protection of the bombers. They were swarming down from every direction, desperate to kill this single American pest who had destroyed 5 of their planes in as many minutes. Tracers were zipping past his canopy, looking like laser beams in the bright sun. 20-millimeter cannon shells were exploding in black puffs around his aircraft. The sky was full of lead and hate. Alex ignored all of it. He had tunnel vision now. Pure focus. He had one more Judy in his sights, one more target before he had to break off and run for home. This one was trailing the pack trying to catch up. The pilot was pushing his engine hard. Black smoke was pouring from the exhaust as he tried to rejoin the safety of the formation. Alex cut the corner. He pushed his throttle through the gate past the mechanical stop into emergency war power. The engine was beyond temperature limits now. The oil pressure gauge was reading almost zero. But the Pratt and Whitney was still screaming, still eating gallons of fuel per minute, still dragging the battered fighter closer to its prey. He closed to point-blank range. 100 yards, 50 yards. So close he could see the rivets on the Judy's tail section. So close he could see the rear gunner frantically trying to unjam his machine gun hands, working desperately on the charging handle. Alex did not feel sorry for him. This was war. This was mathematics. This was him or the fleet. He squeezed the trigger one last time. The guns roared for a fraction of a second. Then silence. Not a jam, not empty. The guns simply stopped because the target had ceased to exist. The M8 rounds sawed the tail completely off the Japanese bomber. The plane snapped in half in midair. The front section tumbled forward. The rear section spun away. The pilot was ejected into the slipstream, his parachute deploying automatically. 6 kills, 8 minutes. Alex checked his watch to confirm. 8 minutes and 14 seconds from first trigger, pull to last. He checked his ammunition counters. He had fired approximately 360 rounds total. That was 60 bullets per airplane. The experts had said you needed 1,000 rounds to kill a bomber. The experts had said you needed tracers to aim properly. The experts had said M8 rounds were too dangerous to use. Alex had just proven that all you needed was a dirty windshield, a bad attitude, and a belt full of invisible fire. But the fight was not over. The silence in Alex's cockpit was broken by a new sound, the sound of anti-aircraft fire. He had chased the enemy so far west that he had flown right into the defensive umbrella of the American fleet. Below him, the battleships and destroyers of Task Force 58 were opening up with everything they had. 5-inch guns, 40mm Bofors, 20mm Oerlikon cannons. The sky was filling with black puffs of exploding shells. Tracers were arcing up from the ships in beautiful deadly patterns. They were shooting at the Japanese bombers. But they did not know Alex was there. They could not tell the difference between one more airplane in a sky full of airplanes. To the nervous gunners on the ships below, frantically firing at anything with wings, Alex was just another target to be swatted down. A 5-inch shell exploded near his right wing. The concussion rocked the Hellcat like a toy boat hit by a wave. Shrapnel pinged off the fuselage. Small holes appeared in the wing. Nothing critical, nothing that would stop him from flying, but enough to make him angry. Alex cursed. He had survived 50 Japanese planes only to be nearly killed by nervous Americans who could not identify their own aircraft. He banked hard, flashing his belly toward the fleet, trying to show his silhouette, trying to display the white star painted on his underside that marked him as friendly. "Do not shoot," he yelled into his oxygen mask, even though they could not hear him. "I am one of the good guys, you idiots." He dove toward the water, skimming the waves at 300 miles per hour, getting under the radar coverage, getting under the guns, getting into the altitude band where the ships would not waste ammunition on a single low-flying contact. He turned toward the Lexington, toward home. The adrenaline was starting to fade now, being replaced by a deep bone-weary exhaustion. His hands were shaking on the stick. His flight suit was soaked through with sweat. The smell of cordite and fear was thick in the cockpit. He keyed his radio. "Lexington, this is Carter. Coming home, prepare the deck." The voice of the air controller came back, sounding stunned. They had been watching the radar. They had seen the blips disappearing one by one. They had counted 6 enemy aircraft removed from the formation by a single friendly contact. "Copy that, Carter," the controller said. "The deck is yours. What is your status?" Alex looked at his fuel gauge. The needle was resting on empty. Fumes, maybe 5 minutes of flying time left. He looked at his ammunition counters, still showing more than half full. All that killing, and he had barely touched his reserves. He looked at the smoke trails staining the horizon behind him. 6 columns of black smoke marking the graves of aircraft that would never return home. "Status is green," Alex said, his voice cracking slightly from dehydration and stress. "But tell Chief Martinez to get some more of those silver bullets ready. I think I found a use for them." He dropped his landing gear. One wheel came down immediately. The other stuck for a second, making his heart skip, then clunked into place with a reassuring thud. The flaps whined as they lowered. The engine was sputtering now, running on the last fumes of gasoline, coughing like a dying man. He lined up with the deck of the Lexington. It looked impossibly small from this distance, a postage stamp floating in a big blue ocean. He had to land this broken, shaking, oil-covered bird on that tiny platform without crashing into the tower, or missing the wires, or a dozen other ways to die after surviving combat. He cut the throttle. The Hellcat settled toward the deck. The landing signal officer was waving the paddles, guiding him in correcting his approach. The hook caught the number 3 wire. Perfect. The harness slammed into his chest as the plane jerked to a violent halt. The deceleration was brutal but controlled. He was down. He was alive. He was safe. Alex slid the canopy back and took a breath of fresh sea air. It tasted sweet after hours of breathing oxygen from a mask. It tasted like life. He unbuckled his harness with hands that would not stop shaking, stood up in the cockpit on legs that felt like water. The deck crew was running toward him, not cheering yet. They were looking at the plane first, looking at the soot covering the nose, looking at the dents in the wings, looking at the oil streaking everything. Alex took off his helmet. His hair was matted with sweat. His face was streaked with oil that had leaked through the canopy seals. His eyes had that 1,000-yard stare that comes from looking death in the face for hours. He looked at the crowd gathering around his wing. Mechanics, ordnance men, other pilots who had landed before him or were waiting to launch. He saw Martinez, the same chief who had called him crazy a year ago, the same man who had fought him on the ammunition choice, the same armorer who had finally agreed to load the M8 rounds to honor his dead brother. Martinez was staring at the gun ports on the wings. They were blackened with powder residue, but the barrels were barely warm. The guns had not overheated, had not jammed, had not exploded. Alex smiled. It was a tired smile, a jagged smile born of exhaustion and relief and vindication. But it was real. He raised his hand, did not say a word, just held up 6 fingers. A Navy photographer's mate happened to be on the flight deck. He was probably looking for a clear shot of the returning aircraft, something to send back to the press office for the newspapers. He saw the commotion near the rail, saw a pilot standing on the wing of a battered Hellcat surrounded by sweating mechanics in dirty coveralls. The pilot looked like he had been through hell, face smeared with oil, flight suit drenched, eyes showing the strain of combat. The photographer raised his camera. "Hey, Alex," someone in the crowd shouted. Carter looked up. He did not salute, did not pose like a recruiting poster. He just grinned, a wide, for all adrenaline-soaked grin, and held up 6 fingers. The shutter clicked. That image, the 6-finger grin, would become the defining picture of the Pacific War. It would be splashed across newspapers from New York to San Francisco. It would tell the folks back home that America was winning, that American boys were beating the Japanese in the air. But the real story was not in the picture. The real story was happening 10 feet away inside the gun bays of the Hellcat. Martinez popped the access panels on the wings. He expected to see melted barrels, expected to see a disaster waiting to be documented, expected to find evidence that Alex had gotten lucky instead of being right. Instead, he saw something that defied everything he thought he knew about ammunition and heat and safety. The belts were still heavy, still loaded. He pulled them out, his hands working automatically, counting the remaining rounds with the precision of 25 years loading aircraft guns. The mathematics made no sense. Alex had destroyed 6 enemy aircraft, 6 heavy bombers and fighters, and he had brought back nearly 2/3 of his bullets. Hal Martinez asked, looking up at Alex wiping gun oil from his hands with a rag that was already saturated. "You barely touched the triggers." Alex jumped down from the wing. His legs almost buckled. He caught himself on the fuselage, fumbled in his flight suit pocket for a cigarette. His hands were shaking too badly to light it. A mechanic offered a lighter. Alex got the cigarette going, took a long drag, let the smoke fill his lungs. "I told you," Chief Alex said, exhaling smoke that curled around his exhausted face. "I did not need to shred them. I just needed to light them." The mockery stopped. The laughter evaporated like morning dew under a hot sun. Suddenly, every pilot in the squadron wanted to know exactly what the ammunition mix was. They wanted the Carter belt, the watchmaker load, the invisible fire, the man they had called crazy, the man they had mocked for obsessing over details, the man they had told to stop trying to be a scientist and just fly the damn plane, had just cleaned the sky using less ammunition than most pilots use to test fire their guns before a mission. That evening, Commander Shaw held an emergency briefing. The ready room was packed. Every pilot who had flown that day, every pilot who had seen the radar returns, every pilot who had heard the impossible radio transmissions about one man and 6 kills in 8 minutes. Today was a victory, Shaw began. The Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. The American fleet shot down over 400 Japanese aircraft. It was the single most lopsided victory in the history of aerial warfare. The Japanese Naval Air Force was effectively wiped out in an afternoon. They will never recover from this loss. But we lost pilots too. Shaw continued, his voice getting heavier. Lieutenant Paul Morrison killed. Engine fire after being hit by a Zero. Lieutenant Charles Wilson killed. Shot down after damaging a Zero that refused to die. Both men were using standard ammunition. Both men scored multiple hits before they died. The Zeros they hit did not burn. The Zeros turned and killed our men. Shaw paused, looked directly at Alex. Lieutenant Carter flew the same mission, encountered the same enemy, used ammunition that I specifically denied authorization for, used ammunition that violated regulations I am sworn to enforce. And Lieutenant Carter achieved 6 confirmed kills in 8 minutes using a fraction of the ammunition that standard doctrine requires. The room was silent. You could hear the ship's ventilation system, the distant sound of aircraft making the hangar deck below. Gentleman Shaw said I was wrong. The regulations were wrong. Lieutenant Carter has been requesting authorization for alternative ammunition loadouts for 6 months. I denied him repeatedly, citing regulations and safety concerns and the wisdom of experts who designed our standard practices. Today, those regulations cost us Morrison and Wilson. Both good men, both skilled pilots, both dead because I valued protocol over effectiveness. Shaw pulled out a piece of paper. Read from it. Effective immediately, I am authorizing Chief Martinez to load any pilot who requests it with Lieutenant Carter's specification ammunition. 75% M8 armor-piercing incendiary, 25% standard armor-piercing. No tracers. Any pilot who is uncomfortable with this loadout may continue to use the standard mix. But I suspect after today, everyone will want the invisible fire. The pilots erupted, questions shouted from every corner, concerns about safety, excitement about improved effectiveness, arguments about tactics. Alex sat quietly in the back. He did not celebrate. He did not gloat. He did not say, "I told you so," even though he had every right. Because Morrison was dead. Wilson was dead. They had died, proving Alex right. That was not victory. That was tragedy. He would rather be wrong and have them alive than be right and have them dead. After the briefing, Martinez found Alex alone on the sponson, the exterior walkway along the side of the carrier, looking out at the darkening Pacific. "You did it," Martinez said. "Proved the theory, changed the regulations, saved lives. Future pilots will come home because of what you did today." Alex did not turn around, kept looking at the ocean. "Morrison and Wilson proved the theory," Alex said. "They died because I could not convince Shaw fast enough, could not break through the regulations in time to save them. Their deaths are on me." "No," Martinez said firmly. "Their deaths are on regulations that valued protocol over effectiveness. Their deaths are on a system that punished innovation and questioning. You tried, you pushed, you broke rules when the system would not bend. That is all anyone can do." "Is it enough?" Alex asked. "Ask the next pilot who comes home because M8 burned a Zero before the Zero could turn and fire," Martinez said. "Ask him if your stubbornness was enough." In the weeks and months that followed, the results spoke louder than any argument could. The squadron adopted the Carter loadout. Kill ratios tripled overnight. Ammunition expenditure dropped by 60%. Pilot survival rates increased dramatically. Other squadrons on other carriers heard about it, requested the same loadout. The Navy Department ordered formal testing. Engineers studied the results, validated the effectiveness, changed the specifications fleet-wide. By August of 1944, the entire Pacific Carrier Force was using high-concentration M8 belts. Some squadrons called it the Carter belt. Others called it invisible fire. Some called it the Watchmaker Special. But they all understood the concept. High incendiary concentration, no tracers, precision over volume, effectiveness over tradition. Alex flew 42 more combat missions between June and August. His confirmed kill total reached 19 aircraft, making him the fourth highest ranking ace in the Navy. But the numbers did not matter to Alex. What mattered was the other pilots coming home. What mattered was zeros burning before they could turn. What mattered was promises kept to his father and to Joseph Martinez and to Thomas Bradford and to all the men who had died because the system was too slow to change. One afternoon in August, a letter arrived from Beth. He opened it expecting news from home updates about the factory, maybe a photograph. Instead, he found a newspaper clipping, an article about the Great Marianas Turkey shoot. It mentioned Lieutenant Alexander Carter. 6 kills in 8 minutes. Innovative ammunition choice. Navy hero, but the article included something unexpected. An interview with Beth. A reporter had tracked down Carter's wife, asked about her husband. Beth's words were printed in the newspaper for everyone to read. Alex is not a hero because he shot down airplanes. Alex is a hero because he refused to accept that good enough was good enough when better was possible. His father died because someone accepted good enough instead of demanding perfect. Alex spent his entire life proving that precision matters, that details matter. That questioning authority when authority is wrong is not insubordination. It is duty. I am proud of him not for the kills, but for the courage to be right when everyone said he was wrong. Alex read the interview 3 times. Then he cried. It was the first time he had cried since his father died 9 years earlier. Not from sadness, from relief, because Beth understood. His wife, who had spent years inspecting every rivet, understood why Alex checked everything, why he questioned everything, why he could not accept good enough. That understanding from the person who mattered most meant more than any medal, more than any recognition, more than any fame. He wrote back immediately, Beth, your interview meant more to me than any commendation. You understand. You always understood. That is why I married you. That is why I fight. Not for glory, but to come home to a woman who knows why details matter. The war will end. I will come home. We will build a life where precision matters and good enough is never acceptable. I love you. I promise to come home, Alex. He sealed the letter, gave it to the mail clerk, went back to his quarters. Tomorrow there would be another mission. More targets, more zeros, more chances to prove that innovation mattered. But tonight he had something more important. He had validation. Not from the Navy, not from his squadron mates, not from the experts who had been wrong. From Beth. From the woman who understood that precision was love. That checking everything twice was how you honored promises. That refusing to accept good enough was how you kept people alive. That was the validation that mattered. That was the proof he needed. That was the evidence that the 8 minutes had meant something beyond kills and numbers. The invisible fire had burned away more than Japanese aircraft. It had burned away doubt, burned away mockery, burned away the lie that good enough was ever good enough when better was possible. And tomorrow it would burn again. September 2nd, 1945. Victory over Japan Day. The war ended with atomic fire over 2 Japanese cities in a surrender signed on the deck of the battleship Missouri. Alexander Carter was 24 years old, 19 confirmed kills. 4th ranking Navy ace, Distinguished Flying Cross pinned to his chest, Silver Star, Air Medal with clusters, Purple Heart from shrapnel wounds during a mission in July. He had survived when statistics said he should be dead, when probability said his name should be on a memorial wall instead of a promotion list. But the medals weighed heavy, not physically. The ribbons and medal were light as feathers, but emotionally each medal represented a mission. Each mission represented moments when other pilots died while Alex lived. Morrison, Wilson, Shaw killed in a kamikaze attack in July. 15 squadron mates total, dead and buried at sea or missing and presumed dead. Alex lived. Why? Because he insisted on different ammunition. Because he obsessed over details. Because he refused to accept good enough. Survivor guilt is real. It is heavy. It is a burden that does not show on the uniform, but crushes the spirit nonetheless. The Navy wanted to keep him, offered a promotion to full lieutenant, offered an instructor position at Pensacola training the next generation of fighter pilots. Offered a career with pension and respect and a future in the peacetime force, Alex declined everything. He wanted civilian life, wanted Beth, wanted normal, wanted a job where mistakes did not kill people. He flew commercial from San Diego to Detroit, arrived October 15th, 1945. Beth was waiting at the airport. They had not seen each other in person for 2 years. Letters, yes. Photographs, yes. But not the actual presence of another human being. Not touch, not voice without static. They stood in the terminal, looking at each other. Both changed by the war in different ways. Alex was thinner, carved down to muscle and nerve by combat stress. Beth was stronger, built up by factory work and the responsibility of keeping bombers flying. Beth broke the silence. You kept your promise. You came home. I tried very hard to keep that promise, Alex said. Lost some friends who could not. You are here, Beth said. That is what matters. They embraced in an airport full of reunions, but theirs felt different. Felt like two people who understood precision and promises finding each other again after the world had tried to break them both. They took a train to the small apartment Beth had rented in Detroit. Modest place, one bedroom, kitchenette, clean, safe, peaceful, no engine noise, no gun smoke, no death, just quiet. That first night, Alex sat on the edge of the bed, unable to sleep. The quiet was wrong. His ears were ringing from years of engine noise. His mind was racing from years of hypervigilance. Every creak of the building made him tense. Every car passing outside made him reach for weapons that were not there. Beth understood. She sat beside him, held his hand, did not speak, just present, patient, understanding that coming home from war took longer than the flight from California. Eventually, Alex spoke. Beth, I need to tell you about a choice I made, about work, about the future. She waited. Navy offered me a commission, teaching position, training new pilots, good pay, respect, a career. I said no. Why, Beth asked. Because if I teach, I will teach aggressiveness. We'll teach tactics that win fights but risk lives. We'll send young pilots into danger. If they die using tactics I taught, that burden is on me. I cannot carry more names, already carry too many. So what will you do? Something where mistakes do not kill people, Alex said. Something precise, something with numbers. Something where if I make an error, the consequence is fixing the error, not burying a person. I am thinking banking, mathematics, counting. You want to be a banker after being a fighter pilot? Seems boring. Boring is exactly what I want, Alex said. Want boring, want safe, want a job where the worst mistake means recalculating numbers, not attending funerals. Want normal, want peace, want to forget war. Beth nodded. Then we will find a boring job. We'll build a boring life. We'll be gloriously normal. The next evening, Beth cooked, their first real meal together in 2 years. Alex sat at the small table watching her move around the kitchenette with the same precision she applied to inspecting rivets. She measured ingredients exactly, timed cooking precisely, checked temperatures, verified doneness, quality control applied to cooking. Beth prepared the meal she had planned since learning Alex was coming home. Fried chicken. The same recipe from that Sunday dinner 4 years ago when they met. The same chicken that had tested whether she understood what mattered. Golden brown pieces emerged from the cast iron skillet, 3 minutes per side, not 250, not 310, 3 minutes exactly. The sound of frying filled the apartment, crackling, popping, the smell of hot lard and seasoned coating. Smell of memory, smell of before the war, smell of promises about to be tested. Beth placed the chicken on a platter, steam rising, coating perfectly crisp, mashed potatoes, 12-minute boil, real butter, no lumps, green beans, 8 minutes, still bright green, cornbread from the cast iron skillet, golden, slightly sweet from honey, sweet tea in tall glasses, brewed with precision. She set the table, white cloth, polished silverware. This was celebration. This was promise fulfilled. This was Alex coming home alive. She sat across from him. Welcome home. Alex looked at the food, looked at the fried chicken, golden and perfect exactly as he remembered, looked at the potatoes, smooth and white, looked at the green beans bright and tender, looked at Beth, who had prepared everything with love and precision. He tried to pick up his fork. His hands shook. He put the fork down. Beth said gently, "Alex, what is wrong? The food is not good." "Food is perfect," Alex said. "That is the problem. It tastes exactly how I remembered. Smells exactly right. Looks exactly the same. But I cannot enjoy it the same way. Cannot separate the taste from the memory of near death, and friends dead, and guilt about surviving when better men did not. Cannot be grateful without feeling guilty for gratitude." Beth reached across the table, took his hand. "You survived because you were a good pilot, and because Martinez loaded good ammunition, and because you checked everything twice. You survived because precision mattered to you. That is not guilt. That is gratitude. Honor those who died by living well. That is the only way to make survival meaningful." Alex nodded. He knew she was right. Also knew that living well required processing the guilt and fear and trauma accumulated during 60 combat missions. Required time, required patience, required understanding that war changed men, and changed men needed time becoming whole again, even if whole meant different than before. They ate slowly, small bites, Alex forcing himself to taste instead of just consuming fuel. Beth patient, not pushing, just present, accepting that coming home took longer than the journey. After dinner, Beth went to the bedroom, returned with a small box, opened it. Inside was the 10mm wrench, chrome worn smooth, handle shaped to Henry Carter's hand. "Found this in your sea bag when it shipped home," Beth said. "Recognized it from your stories. This was your father's wrench, the wrench you kept as a reminder to check everything twice. Want you to know something, Alex. You kept that promise. You honored your father. You proved precision mattered. You proved that refusing to accept good enough saved lives. Your father would be proud. I am proud. Now you can rest. Now you can heal. Now you can be home, not just physically, but mentally. War is over. Precision still matters. But precision in a different way now. Precision in building life. Precision in being a husband. Precision in being whole." Alex took the wrench, held it, heavy with memory, heavy with promises, kept and promises still waiting. "Thank you, Beth, for understanding, for waiting, for being the person who knows why this matters, for being home. Always," Beth said, "always understanding, always here." November 1945. Alex started work at Detroit National Bank, entry-level clerk, processing loan applications, checking calculations, verifying documents. Precise work where mistakes were fixable. Exactly what he wanted. The customers had no idea who processed their mortgage applications. Did not know that the man verifying their income statements had verified target alignment through gun sights. Did not know that the hands signing their loan approvals had once squeezed triggers that turned 6 airplanes into falling fire in 8 minutes. Alex preferred anonymity. Arrived early, worked efficiently, left on time, no socializing, no war stories, no mention of service beyond the minimum required. When coworkers asked about military service, Alex said he served in the Pacific Navy, came home. That was all. When they pressed for details, he changed the subject, asked about their families. People loved talking about themselves. They stopped asking about Alex when given the opportunity. But one person knew. Thomas Richardson, the branch manager, Army veteran, Normandy, saw combat, recognized something in Alex. The way he sat with his back to walls facing doors. The way he scanned rooms when entering. Combat instincts never fully fade. Richardson pulled Alex aside in December. "You were a combat pilot, were you not?" Alex hesitated. "Yes, thought so. Have an eye for veterans. Will not ask about missions. Just want you to know I understand. Understand nightmares. Understand hypervigilance. Understand why you chose banking instead of staying military. Sometimes the safest thing is work where death is not a possibility. I respect that. Will protect your privacy." Richardson kept his promise. When customers asked about the quiet clerk with meticulous handwriting, Richardson said Carter was a private person who did excellent work. That was all they needed to know. March 1946. Beth announced she was pregnant. Alex was terrified and thrilled simultaneously. Terrified because he would be responsible for a child. What if he made mistakes? What if precision failed? What if he could not protect a child the way he could not protect squadron mates? Thrilled because a child meant future, meant life beyond war, meant promises to Beth bearing fruit. December 7th, 1946. David Henry Carter was born, named for Alex's father. Middle name Henry honored the mechanic who died from a missed detail. First name David chosen by Beth, meaning beloved. Alex held his newborn son, made a silent promise. I will teach you to check. Will teach you to verify. Will teach you never to accept good enough. But will also teach you that precision is not enough. Sometimes people die despite doing everything correctly. Will teach you to carry guilt without letting guilt crush you. Will teach you to be better than I am. Summer 1958. David was 11 years old, curious boy who asked constant questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? Why do planes fly? Why does father wake up sweating some nights? Alex answered the first two easily using science and physics. The third question was harder. Could not tell an 11-year-old about combat and death and survivor guilt. Said sometimes people have bad dreams. Nothing to worry about. But David noticed patterns. Noticed father checked everything twice. Checked door locks before bed. Checked the stove after cooking. Checked car tires before every drive. Checked David's bicycle brakes before every ride. Dad, why do you check everything so much? David asked. Because I learned that checking prevents mistakes, Alex said. Mistakes can be expensive, like costing money, like costing things more important than money. Alex decided to teach his son about precision through a medium safer than aircraft engines or combat, through cooking. Sunday afternoons became lessons, not just cooking, teaching precision through food preparation, teaching that details mattered, teaching that measurement mattered. They started simple, scrambled eggs. Alex showed David the process. 2 eggs, crack in a bowl, add 1 tablespoon milk, not a tablespoon and a half, not half a tablespoon, 1 tablespoon exactly. Whisk until uniform yellow, no streaks of white remaining. Heat pan to medium, not medium high, not medium low, medium. Add butter. Wait until melted and foaming but not browning. Pour eggs, count to 10, stir gently. Count to 10, stir again. Repeat until just set. Remove from heat. They continue cooking from residual heat. Serve immediately. Dad, these are just eggs, David said. Why so specific? Because specific is how you show love, Alex explained. Your mother eats these eggs. If I overcook them, they become rubbery. If I undercook them, they become watery. If I cook them just right, they become perfect. Perfect shows I cared enough to do it correctly. That is love. That is precision. That is a promise kept. They progressed to more complex dishes. By the time David was 13, Alex was teaching him fried chicken. Beth's recipe. The recipe from that Sunday dinner 17 years ago. Temperature matters most, Alex said. Heat the oil to exactly 350 degrees. Not 340, not 360, 350. Use a thermometer. Verify. Too hot, and the chicken burns outside while staying raw inside. Too cold, and the chicken absorbs oil, becoming greasy. Coat chicken in seasoned flour. Place in oil. Set timer for 3 minutes. Not approximately 3 minutes. Exactly 3 minutes. When timer rings, flip chicken. Set timer 3 minutes again. When it rings, remove chicken. Let drain on a rack, not paper towels. Paper towels make coating soggy. The rack allows air circulation, keeping coating crisp. But Dad, what if I am off by 10 seconds, David asked. 10 seconds is probably acceptable, Alex said. But what if you assume 10 seconds is acceptable every time? What if 10 seconds becomes 30 seconds? What if 30 becomes a minute? What if a minute means burned chicken? It is a slippery slope, son. Better to be exact from the start. Better to build habits of precision. Then when precision truly matters, like when you are flying an airplane or performing surgery or building a bridge, precision becomes reflex, not effort. David absorbed these lessons. Learn precision through eggs and chicken and cornbread. Learn measurement through tablespoons and teaspoons and cups. Learn timing through minutes and seconds and observation. Learn that caring about details was how you loved, how you honored, how you kept promises. One evening after a cooking lesson, David asked Dad, "Why is precision so important to you?" Alex thought about how to answer, decided on truth, age-appropriate version. "My father died because he forgot to check one thing," Alex said. "One small thing. A bolt on an engine. Forgot to replace it. The bolt was rusty, cut his hand, got infected, died from that infection. If he had checked, if he had not rushed, if he had been precise, he would have lived." David was quiet processing this. "So precision is how I honor him," Alex continued. "How I keep his memory alive. How I make sure his death meant something. Every time I check something twice, I'm keeping a promise I made to him. Every time I refuse to accept good enough, I am proving he did not die for nothing." "I understand," David said. "I will be precise too. For Grandpa Henry." June 1964. David graduated high school, valedictorian, top of his class in mathematics and science, exactly like his father. Teachers said he should go to engineering school, make something of himself. David said he wanted to be a Navy pilot like his father. Alex's heart stopped. "Why would you want that?" "Because you taught me that precision matters," David said. "That details matter. That questioning authority when authority is wrong is a duty, not a crime. I want to serve, want to fly, want to honor what you did." Alex was terrified, did not want his son in combat, did not want David risking his life, did not want to bury his child the way he had buried squadron mates. But he also understood, could not stop David from choosing service any more than anyone could have stopped Alex. David had inherited the same obsession, the same drive, the same need to prove that precision mattered. "If you join the Navy, if you become a pilot, promise me 3 things," Alex said. "What 3 things?" "1, check everything twice. 2, question regulations when regulations are wrong. 3, come home. Whatever it takes, come home. Because your mother and I cannot survive burying you." "I promise," David said. He applied to the Naval Academy, was accepted, enrolled fall 1964. David was commissioned in 1968. Vietnam War was raging. He was assigned to VF 111 Sundowners, flying F-4 Phantom fighters. Different era, different technology, same principles, precision, verification, refusing to accept good enough. The letters started arriving. David wrote home regularly. "Dad, your lessons matter here. Other pilots cut corners. I do not. Check everything twice like you taught. Other pilots trust standard procedures without verification. I verify everything. They mock me. Call me careful. Call me obsessive. Sound familiar?" Alex wrote back immediately. "Let them mock. Mockery stops when you survive and they do not. Stay precise. Stay alive. Come home." Another letter arrived in April of 1970. "Dad flew combat mission over Hanoi today. Encountered North Vietnamese MiG-21 fighters. Outnumbered. But I remembered your lesson. Precision over volume. Careful aim over spray and pray. Use tactics you developed. Close to effective range before firing. Verified target identification. Fired only when certain. Got a kill. Use minimal ammunition for maximum effect. Survived the encounter. Other pilots died firing wildly, hoping for luck. I lived using precision. Your tactics work. Your legacy lives." Alex read that letter and cried, not from pride, from fear, because his son was in danger, because David was making kills, which meant David was in the fight, which meant David was changing. Combat changes people. Alex knew. Wanted to protect his son from that change. Could not. Could only pray David came home intact. David survived Vietnam. 12 combat missions, 3 confirmed kills, 0 ammunition wasted, 0 friendly fire incidents, 0 mistakes because he checked everything twice. He came home in 1975, stayed in the Navy, made it a career, became an instructor, teaching young pilots, teaching precision, teaching verification, teaching his father's legacy to the next generation. Retired in 1992 as a commander. Honorable service spanning 24 years. Survived because of lessons learned from a father who learned from a grandfather who died from a missed detail. The chain of precision teaching stretched across 3 generations. Henry to Alex to David. Each generation learning that good enough killed, that precision saved, that checking everything twice was not paranoia, was survival. 1970 through 2000. Alex continued his banking career. Retired in 1986 at age 65, 39 years of processing loans, verifying millions of calculations, zero major errors, zero scandals, zero drama. Exactly what he wanted. Boring, precise, safe. Customers who met him in retirement did not know his history, did not know the quiet elderly man buying groceries had been a fighter ace, did not know he had changed naval aviation doctrine, did not know the six-finger grin photo hanging in the Naval Academy Museum was his photograph. He preferred it that way. Preferred anonymity. Preferred being remembered as a good banker who did his job correctly, not as a warrior who killed efficiently. But the Navy remembered. Every few years, the Naval Academy invited him to speak, to tell his story, to inspire cadets. Alex declined repeatedly, said he was one pilot among thousands. Others did more. Others deserved recognition. He just did his job. Let others tell stories. He wanted peace. In 2002, the Academy insisted. 75th anniversary of the turkey shoot was approaching. They wanted original participants to speak, wanted history preserved before all the veterans died. Alex agreed reluctantly, went to Annapolis, stood before an auditorium of cadets, told his story, not a glory story, a true story. I was a pilot who questioned regulations, Alex said, who argued with superiors, who tested theories that violated protocol. My theory worked. It saved lives. But remember the pilots who died proving I was right. Remember Morrison. Remember Wilson. Remember that innovation has a cost paid in blood by men who could not wait for proof. You will face the same choice. Follow regulations that might be wrong or break regulations that might be right. If you break them, be certain, because lives depend on being right. Question authority. Verify everything. Test your theories. But do it carefully, because people die from carelessness disguised as boldness. The cadets gave him a standing ovation. Alex left immediately, did not stay for the reception, did not sign autographs, did not take photographs. Went back to his quiet retirement in California. Back to peace, back to Beth, who understood why he could not celebrate, who held his hand in silence that was more valuable than any applause. Beth died in 2018, age 96, 75 years married. Alex lost his anchor, lost the person who understood, lost the reason precision mattered. He fell into depression. David visited frequently. But Alex was fading, will to live fading in with Beth's passing. September 2014. Alex was 93 years old, diagnosed with congestive heart failure. Not sudden, gradual decline. Doctors said months, maybe a year. Alex accepted the prognosis. He had lived a full life, kept promises, lost people, survived, found peace with Beth, ready to join her. His granddaughter Jennifer was 29 years old, aerospace engineer at Boeing. She had never known her grandfather was an ace, never saw his medals, never heard the stories because Alex refused to tell them, and David respected that silence. But during a visit in September, Jennifer noticed a framed photograph on the wall, black and white, a young pilot standing on an aircraft wing, grinning, holding up 6 fingers, oil-streaked face, 1,000-yard stare barely hidden behind the smile. "Grandpa, who is that?" Jennifer asked. Alex looked at the photo, looked at his granddaughter who had his eyes in his father's obsession with precision and Beth's understanding that details mattered. "That is me," Alex said. 70 years ago, different person, different life. You were a pilot, you flew in the war. Why did you never tell me? Because I did not want to be defined by war, Alex said. Wanted to be defined by what I did after. By my banking career, by my family, by a quiet life. War was necessary, but not my identity. It was something I survived, not something I am. But you should be proud, Jennifer said. You served, you survived, you have medals. Pride is complicated. When survival meant others died, Alex said. I prefer gratitude over pride. Grateful I came home. Grateful I met your grandmother. Grateful I lived long enough to meet you. That is enough. Jennifer asked permission to research, to learn the full story, to understand what her grandfather had done. Alex hesitated, finally agreed with conditions. If you research fully, he said. Learn about Morrison who died. Learn about Wilson who died. Learn about Joseph Martinez who died. Learn about all of them. Do not just learn about me. Learn about the cost of innovation. Learn about the price of being right. Learn that precision matters, but people matter more. Jennifer promised. She spent 3 months researching. September through November 2014. Accessed Naval Archives, read after action reports from June 19, 1944, found gun camera footage, found Martinez's testimony from the 1946 investigation into M8 effectiveness, found Beth's newspaper interview from August 1944, found letters Alex had written, found letters David had written during Vietnam. She pieced together the full story. Not just the combat, the complete arc. Henry's death in 1935 to David's survival in Vietnam. Precision as a religion spanning 4 generations. A family shaped by one mechanic's fatal mistake and one son's promise never to repeat it. In November, Jennifer visited Alex with her research compiled into a thick folder. "Grandpa, I understand now," she said. "Understand why you check everything. Understand why Dad checks everything. Understand why I check everything at Boeing when designing aircraft systems. We are Henry Carter's great-grandchildren. We carry his legacy, the legacy of a man who died from a missed detail. We honor him by never missing details ourselves. You did not just change naval aviation. You changed our family, made us engineers, made us precise, made us careful. That is your real legacy, not the kills, not the medals. Precision as inheritance passed down through generations." Alex cried. First time Jennifer had seen her grandfather cry. "You understand, you get it. War was just a manifestation of the principle my father taught. Check everything, verify everything. Never accept good enough when better is achievable. That principle lives in you, lives in your work designing aircraft, lives in your refusal to cut corners, lives in the precision you demand from yourself and others. That makes me prouder than any medal. Because the principle survived the war, survived me, lives on in you. That is immortality, not fame, not recognition, a principle carried forward by people you love. Will you let me tell your story?" "Write an article," Jennifer asked. "Only if you tell the whole story," Alex said. "Tell about my father. Tell about Morrison and Wilson. Tell about Martinez and his brother. Tell about all of them. Make it clear that innovation has a cost. Make clear that being right is not glory. It is responsibility. Make clear that precision matters because people matter." Jennifer agreed. March 15, 2015. Alexander Carter died peacefully in his sleep. Congestive heart failure, surrounded by David and Jennifer and family. His last words were a whisper, "Beth, Beth, I kept my promise. I came home." He died thinking about his wife, about promises, about precision mattering even at the end. Age 93, 70 years after the war. A life well lived despite the scars that never fully healed. The funeral was modest per Alex's wishes. He had requested no military honors, no flag, no gun salute, just family. But the Navy sent representatives anyway. Sent an honor guard. Said Lieutenant Carter changed how we fight, changed how we train, changed how we remember innovation. He deserves honors. The family allowed it. Alex would have hated the attention, but he also would have understood that sometimes protocol exists for good reasons. Jennifer delivered the eulogy. She stood at the podium looking at the gathered family, the Navy representatives, the few remaining World War II veterans who had known Alex. "My grandfather, Alexander Carter, was not defined by what he destroyed." Jennifer began. "He was defined by what he built. He built a life with my grandmother, Beth, built a career in banking, built a family spanning 3 generations, built a legacy of precision that shaped us all. His father, Henry, died from a missed detail. One rusty bolt, one forgotten check. That death shaped Alex, made him obsessive, made him a questioner, made him unable to accept good enough when better was achievable. In combat, that obsession saved lives. After combat, that obsession shaped our family. I am an aerospace engineer at Boeing. I design aircraft systems. I check everything twice. I question regulations when regulations are wrong. I verify calculations. I demand precision from myself and from others. That is not my nature. It is my inheritance. My grandfather taught my father. My father taught me. We are Henry Carter's great-grandchildren. We carry his lesson forward. Check. Verify. Never cut corners. Never accept good enough when better is possible. My grandfather flew 60 combat missions, achieved 19 confirmed kills, changed naval aviation doctrine with a theory that experts said was impossible. But he asked me to remember not just his achievements, but the costs. Morrison died proving Grandpa right. Wilson died proving Grandpa right. Joseph Martinez died before the theory could save him. My grandfather carried those names for 70 years. Carried guilt. Carried responsibility. To the pilots here, to the engineers, to anyone who innovates, remember my grandfather's lesson. Innovation has a cost. Being right means responsibility. Precision matters because people matter. Question authority when authority is wrong, but question carefully. Verify thoroughly. Because lives depend on being right. To my family, remember that precision is love. Grandpa checked our bicycles because he loved us. Checked our cars because he loved us. Checked every detail of our lives because he loved us and refused to let preventable mistakes hurt people he loved. That is his legacy. Not medals, not fame. Love expressed through precision. Grandpa, you kept your promises. Kept the promise to great-grandpa Henry never to miss details. Kept the promise to Grandma Beth to come home. Kept the promise to yourself to live with integrity. Kept the promise to future generations by teaching us well. Rest now, your work is done. Your precision lives on in us. Thank you, June 19th, 2024, 80th anniversary of the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. The Naval Academy held a commemoration ceremony. Jennifer was invited to speak representing her grandfather. She stood at the same podium where Alex had stood 22 years earlier, looked at 400 cadets in their dress whites, young faces, future pilots, future officers, future keepers of the legacy. 80 years ago today, Jennifer began. My grandfather, Lieutenant Alexander Carter, flew into the largest air battle in history. He flew a damaged aircraft with a dying engine. He flew alone after the squadron scattered during the scramble launch. He flew with ammunition that everyone said was too dangerous to use. And in 8 minutes, he shot down 6 enemy aircraft using a fraction of the ammunition that standard doctrine said was necessary. He proved the experts wrong, proved the regulations needed changing, proved that precision could beat volume, proved that innovation could defeat protocol. But my grandfather asked me to tell you what that victory cost. It cost Morrison, who died that same day. It cost Wilson, who died that same day. It cost Joseph Martinez, who died 3 weeks before the battle. It cost Commander Shaw, who died weeks after from a kamikaze attack, carrying guilt that his adherence to regulations had cost lives. It cost my grandfather 70 years of survivor guilt, wondering why he lived when better men died. Innovation is not glory. Innovation is responsibility. When you question authority, when you break regulations, when you prove a new way works, you carry the weight of everyone who died before the proof arrived. You carry the weight of everyone who died, proving you right. You carry the responsibility to teach the next generation so they do not have to rediscover truth through bloodshed. My grandfather taught my father. My father taught me. We now teach you. Check everything twice. Question regulations when regulations are wrong. Verify before trusting. Demand precision from yourself before demanding it from others. Optimize for the specific threat, not the general case. Use the right tool for the job. Never accept good enough when better is achievable. But also remember this: precision without compassion is cruelty. My grandfather was precise because he cared. Cared about his squadron mates. Cared about his family. Cared about future pilots. Cared about you cadets sitting here today. His precision was love expressed through mathematics. His verification was promises kept through obsession. His legacy lives because people mattered more than protocol. Go forth from here. Fly well. Fight smart. Come home. That is what my grandfather would say. That is what I see. Honor him by being precise. Honor him by questioning. Honor him by surviving. Honor him by teaching the next generation. That is how legacy lives, not through monuments carved in stone, but through principles carried forward by people who understand why details matter. The cadets stood, applauded. Some were crying. The World War II veterans in attendance, the few still alive, stood with difficulty, saluted, understanding passed between generations. The torch handed forward, the legacy secured. They called him the watchmaker. Mocked him for obsessing over details that officers were supposed to ignore. Mocked him for questioning protocols that everyone else accepted. Mocked him for insisting on precision when volume seemed safer and tradition seemed wiser. The mockery stopped on June 19, 1944, when 6 aircraft dissolved into invisible fire in 8 minutes, when theory became proof, when innovation saved lives that protocol would have sacrificed. But Alexander Carter never celebrated, never bragged, never claimed genius. He just said he was doing his job. Just said the mechanics did the real work. Just said he was honoring a father who died from a missed detail. Humility defined him. Precision drove him. Love motivated him. Responsibility burdened him. He changed naval warfare, changed how America fights in the air, changed how the Navy trains pilots, changed how we remember that sometimes the expert is wrong and the lieutenant is right. Changed 4 generations of a family who inherited his obsession with checking, who carry forward the principle that precision matters because people matter. If you or someone you love served as an innovator, who questioned authority, as a mechanic who knew details mattered, as a veteran who understood that sometimes breaking rules is the only way to keep promises, share their names in the comments below. Share their stories. Make sure they are not forgotten. This remembering is for them. This story is their story. This memorial is their memorial. Alexander Carter, Lieutenant Junior Grade, United States Navy, fighter pilot, ace, innovator, banker, father, grandfather, keeper of promises, teacher of precision, carrier of legacy, 1921 to 2015, 93 years of life, 70 years after the war, lived well, died peacefully, legacy endures. Precision lives on in Jennifer designing aircraft at Boeing, lives on in every cadet at Annapolis learning the VCU curve, the technique of closing to point-blank range before firing. Lives on in every pilot who questions regulations that do not make sense. Lives on in everyone who refuses to accept good enough when better is possible. The invisible fire still burns, not in tracers that fade after 1,000 yards, but in principles that span generations, in families shaped by one mechanic's death and one son's promise, in the understanding that checking everything twice is not paranoia, is love, is honoring the dead by protecting the living. Henry Carter died because he did not check. Alex Carter lived because he always checked. David Carter survived Vietnam because he learned to check. Jennifer Carter builds safe aircraft because she checks. The chain continues. The legacy grows. The precision endures. Thank you, Alex, for everything. Thank you for questions that saved lives. Thank you for precision that changed doctrine. Thank you for showing us that sometimes crazy is genius waiting for proof. Thank you for coming home to Beth. Thank you for teaching David. Thank you for inspiring Jennifer. Thank you for the 6-finger grin that became a symbol of American innovation defeating foreign protocol. Rest now. Your work is done. Your engine can finally quit. Your promises are kept. Your precision lives eternal. The invisible fire you lit on June 19, 1944 still burns bright, still lighting the way, still teaching that details matter, still proving that one person who refuses to accept good enough can change the world. If this story moved you, if it reminded you why precision matters, if it honored someone you loved who checked everything twice, hit that subscribe button. Help us preserve these stories before silence takes them. Share this video. Tell someone why details matter. Keep the memory alive, because forgetting is easy. Remembering requires effort. And some stories, some lessons, some legacies are too important to let slip away into the silence that eventually takes us all. Alex Carter checked everything twice so others could come home once. That deserves remembering, that deserves honoring, that deserves passing forward to the next generation who will face their own impossible choices between protocol and innovation. The watchmaker taught us that time matters. that precision matters, that promises matter, that people matter most of all. Thank you for watching. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for understanding why the invisible fire still burns.